Do we have Sarah online?
Sarah texted me that she was going to likely be somewhat late to the meeting. She was stuck in traffic, so hopefully she'll join late, but
Orono rush hour.
or, yeah,
It's crazy.
she's in Boston, I think.
Yeah, she's
Mhm.
zooming.
She's going to the Taylor Swift concert. She missed it. She's out of the way, New Jersey.
Nice.
So we'll just wait for the voice from on high before we begin. Recording?
Start.
Okay, we
Yeah.
can't hear the voice. All right, so welcome this evening to the May 25th Orono Budget Workshop. We have Councilors Kenny, Berthel, Laraway, Demerit, and myself, Councilor Wingard present. Councilor Marks will be joining us shortly online. Before we begin with new material in the budget, let's revisit a couple sections that we've discussed previously. Sophie has questions about rec program, finalizing rec programming.
So, two of the questions that we kind of started having conversation about, but I don't have clear direction on, have to do with the pool. The first one is, are we opening the pool? We have not published hours yet, so one of the cuts that is up there as a potential service level decreases has to do with the pool. So I want to make sure that I'm not moving us forward to things that we can't undo without causing consternation if we are still going to be looking at that. But if you know you want to open the pool, then that's an easy yes, and I will continue.
It's an
Doing
easy yes
that.
for me.
I also would like to open the pool.
Yes.
Okay.
I somehow voted no matter what. I'm open to the pool being open.
So the other question that was raised is, in the past 2 years, we have only had lifeguards there and not an individual who was at the front desk taking money. Under the contract we have, the University of Maine employees will not handle money. So the question I have is, are we adding $1,500? Because my current budget does not include somebody to handle money. And if the answer was no, the two choices that I see, might be more, but the two that I have are to use the system we used last year, which is people could buy passes or tickets in advance. Not that I would poster it on the side of a billboard, but when somebody shows up without a ticket or the ability to purchase a ticket, their name gets put on a list in pencil and they're asked to please make good on it sometime before they come back. We didn't have any issues with a name not getting crossed off as having paid. So that was one way to do it. The other way is that we talked about is to simply not charge, which we would have to reduce the revenue for the pool by probably right around $5,000. We would be at about $1,000.
5,000, about $1,000. What?
We would, so I think there's 6,000 in the revenue line. I think we'd have to reduce it by about 5,000.
What did we take in last year there? How much is the pool a day?
But
Buck.
50, give me a second, I'll tell you.
Stillwater's free, but.
Don't tell people that because
You're
we
not supposed to throw
really,
the pool.
we really don't.
Really? All right. Just, okay, that's all you gotta say. Don't swim in the river.
Yeah, please don't. I know people do, but we don't want to be advocating. Because we're not protecting. All right. So when we look at So in total, last year for the pool, we brought in $5,191. I have that budgeted at 5,000 this year. And the reason I would take all but about 1,000 is because I think we are gonna try to do swim lessons, which will bring in probably close to $1,000. But I wouldn't say you don't have to. I mean, if we're not gonna make people pay or ask people to pay, I would not then charge for passes, pool passes, or, you know, I mean, it takes everything out, not just the daily entrance fee. And you want to know what that is, Leo? Give me just a second.
Well, it doesn't matter, the number, but I was curious how we get to 5,000. But that's not really that relevant. It's $1.50. I thought we talked also about having the possibility of having just a money box that the university person doesn't touch, but that staff can clean out on a that could accommodate. So that would mean we could keep charging. We could avoid having to come downtown to get a pass and all of that.
But you don't have to come downtown to get the pass or the ticket. You can do it online. It's.
I thought that was some of the gripe though. People couldn't, people like it wasn't, I thought that was some of the issue that they didn't get here to get it or something.
But you can, just like you can buy tickets to go to the dump online. I'm sorry, the transfer station online.
Please, let's not. call it
You can, the landfill, there we go. The landfill, you can buy those online. You could do the very same thing and buy your swim ticket online. If people didn't understand that, then that's a different issue.
And some people might not want to vote. People might not be.
So daily swim fees, I was quoting like when I got here, I'm sorry. Daily swim fees are $3 for resident, $6 for non-resident. And passes are $40 for a resident, $80 for an individual, for a non-resident for individual, $80 for a family, resident, $160 non-resident.
So is there anything prohibiting us from having a money box that is locked that the person from the university doesn't manage or touch other than saying put your money in?
I think you're still gonna have to have that taken out. Probably not, I guess I would say, probably not, but it becomes kind of by donation. I mean, I think that's part of the thing. I think that what they don't want, it's not just you can't touch the money, it's also we don't really want to, just like we did this past year, we didn't turn people away or fight with them about having a ticket or not ticket. Yeah. I'm not going to ask this. I don't think it's right to set up lifeguards, many of whom are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, to fight with people if they're not going to put their dollar in the box. So it would kind of be a on your honor kind of thing.
Honor system, but that way you keep the right kind of regular revenue, because people are going to get passes. People are going to pay.
Yeah, people are happy to
rather
chip
than-
in toward the pool. I love the idea of having it be suggested donation for your swim tickets and your
Well, I don't even know about that. I think keep the
But-
same rates, keep the
Yeah.
same passes.
have money
and-
box. So
and
kid shows up on his
show
bike.
up. Yeah,
I'm
that's my thought.
open to it being free, with a donation box. I don't know what other people think, but I don't love the idea of having to make someone come to the town office, which is closed every Friday and
Mhm.
it's closed sometimes
Yeah.
on Monday. We're going online for that, and it just seems like,
Particularly if we're gonna have weekend hours, we don't have weekend hours.
Yeah.
Donation box is fine. I would like to maintain the fee that we charge outside rec programs to bring kids here.
I'm open to it being free as well. I think, especially if there ends up being any kind of hurdle with a money box as a simple workaround, I'd rather have it be free than have there be a logistical barrier, be that cell phone use or needing to come to another place for people to access the pool.
I guess I feel like $40 pass for the season or whatever it is for the family, it's a pretty good deal. I think, and we do scholarships if someone, I don't know. So I mean, I think we are pretty accommodating typically on those things. So I feel like it's $4 or $5 grand revenue that helps maintain this awesome asset that we have. I'd be, again, I'm in favor of
So-
keeping it as it is, allowing ultimate flexibility. Here's the box, put it in on your honor.
Okay.
And if that's.
I think
yeah.
I've got my direction.
That's, well, I don't know, that's me. Everyone's.
That's what you do. I mean,
I think we're split between make it
Yeah.
free versus like maybe collect a little revenue. Do you want a tie break here?
I think I'm leaning with Leo, I think, and we've been able to trust the honor system. It sounds like this last year. I think, but I agree with Sonia, if it's like some logistical barrier, try with like making sure somebody's there to get the box. I don't know. I don't feel strongly enough about us collecting revenue. If it is a problem, I'm fine with it being free.
So based on what I'm hearing here, this is what I think I would do. And you can nix it if you want. And I don't want to take forever because I know I've got folks who have worked really hard to be here tonight but I think, how about we keep it exactly the way it was last year, but add a locked box with a thing to, a hole in it, that if you show up, you don't have a ticket and you want to pay with cash, you can put your cash there. And I'll deal with the logistics and the keeping everybody happy. But doing it that way, you're also going to limit the amount of cash that's in that box. Okay.
Thanks.
and
Does
if
that
we
work?
want, well, if we wanted to come at it for being free, do we still have time to do that as part of the budget or is this?
So as part of the budget, if you want it to be free, I would simply take out $5,000 of revenue.
Okay.
And we can do that anytime. What I know is I would, at this point, start my normal process of letting people know what the costs are. And if you make it free, then you can do woohoo, council's awesome.
Great. You have another rec question, sorry.
That's it.
Can I just check to see if you guys are hearing things?
I can hear
We can
you.
hear you now.
All right, I was gonna say, I just saw everybody look up, so that's a good sign.
Before we go into public works infrastructure, it's been our practice to have a short time to review anything that we discussed in our last budget workshop. So is there anything on public safety that we need to revisit now?
And I guess upon reflection, I liked Leo's. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I seem to recall you suggesting or bringing up the idea of the Gould's Landing security, maybe scaling back to halftime or something. And I wouldn't mind us revisiting and considering that. I also was leaning in favor of one of the other potential service level changes that they suggested. Maybe not suggested, I don't know what the word is, but eliminating one hybrid cruiser capital expense request. Those are two things that.
Can I ask Sophie, because I don't want to get into a huge cruiser discussion now. Can I ask you to get us a number on what we would immediately save by delaying that purchase, but what the cost would be in terms of then acquiring another non-emergency vehicle for the fleet when the emergency vehicle doesn't trickle down? Maybe we can talk about that when we have both of those.
And I just want to be really clear that the budget exercise that you had, when I asked staff to do that, I was really clear that this was high level, broad brush strokes. If people wanted to dig into a number, we would go back and actually begin to pull things apart, because several of those numbers are not as simple as just doing it. With the Gould's Landing, one of the things I'm gonna have to check in on is whether or not they'll issue a contract for less than a certain number of hours. Maybe they will, and it will be great, but I just want to make sure if you're making that decision, you're understanding what we know that we could actually do what you're envisioning.
I'm curious if other counselors are.
Yeah,
on board with that.
and I guess I don't really know, but my thinking would be that would be more around weekend. And that's probably maybe that's harder to staff for them or something. I don't know, but that. Not knowing usage, which I don't know, I assume more people can go to the lake on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, Saturday, I don't know, weekends seem like they'd be more busy to me, but if that's not the case, it's not the case, but.
Pretty crazy out there.
I thought Leo's point too is he made last week was a good one, that the people who live out in that part of town don't receive a lot of services from the town. This is one of the few things that we point to that we do for them. So maybe limiting hours is a good thing, but I'd hate to cut the program altogether because I think it's important to, show that we're responsive to their concerns out there. Sensible.
I'd be supportive of looking into both of those possible service level changes. So both reducing the hours, but similarly not cutting, because I think it's, valuable to be sort of signaling support for that community for the Gould's Landing, and looking into eliminating the hybrid cruiser capital expense for this year.
We will revisit that.
Great.
Okay. So let's move into public works and infrastructure.
And I
Oh,
have
yeah, I'm sorry.
one other on public safety,
Yeah.
and this is flipping to fire. And that's that I looked through the fire sections again, and also looked in detail for the first time at this sort of matrix that Sarah had handed out. And I actually think this would be really helpful to sort of see this filled out. It need not happen like in, I don't want to make a project of it that, takes Chief Lowe's time for days on end. But looking at this, I think that there are some things that he might know off the top of his head, and I would be really interested in sort of some of that information. If it's
Chief
acceptable.
Lowe has started to build that information, not necessarily in the matrix. The matrix isn't really.
Not
When you
his
start
format.
pulling the information, the one thing I did tell him was that looking at 3 shifts of anything at this point in time and trying to dig back to that is a lot of work for something that we're never going to be able to get back. We are never going to be able to bargain that 4th shift away. It's just, we could try, but what we would have to give up would probably be substantial monetarily that you wouldn't want to. So I guess I would want to have a conversation about how much effort we want to put people through to give us information that we're never going to be able to go back.
Yeah, so maybe considering just the sort of the half of it that assumes 4 shifts, since that's contractual, but sort of
Yep.
parses out sort of service level
Yep.
with different staffing
Yep.
within that would be
Yep.
really helpful.
And I
So,
think he is working on that, but
Great.
that's not something that we have at our fingertips.
yeah,
right
no,
now.
no worries. It was just something that I wanted to revisit because I wanted to second that. I thought that would be really helpful. Both for this year's budget and looking ahead toward sort of the longer term.
Yeah, and I think that's valid. Now, if 3 shifts are just a thing of the past, then it's valid, skipping those for sure. And we are now currently 4 of 6,
4 shifts of 6.
which we only hired 3 new through that SAFER grant.
Yeah, we had a floater. So we had shifts of 5 with a floater. We just never saw it because of all of the absences.
Gotcha. And okay. Great, thanks.
Are you ready to move into?
I think so.
Yeah.
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 All right.
So normally we have Chris and Rob flip a coin to figure out who's gonna go first, because Chris has had to sit through hours and hours and then get 2 minutes of attention too many times, but WPCF has, so we've done, did you guys decide who's going first tonight? Does that work? Okay, can we do WPCF first?
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Maybe you're not gonna complain the way Joe did.
This one instead of the one in our book. This
Yes.
instead of the one in the book.
So I just handed out a brand new sheet, and the reason for that of WPCF. Smaller one of the 2. And the reason for that is that yesterday Chris found out that Juniper Ridge landfill, which is where we dispose of our sludge, is implementing two new fees. They're increasing their fee by $4.46 a ton. And there's a new $5 a ton state fee. So if you look at or account 78, 690, 671, which would be on page 4 of that packet. You're gonna see that instead of the decrease that we had thought we were gonna have in that line of about $15,000, we are up now $5,445. Chris did the math based on 1,500 tons of sludge, which we're confident that
That's the highest we've ever brought up. We've had 2 years of 1,500 tons. All the other years have been less than years.
And because Juniper Ridge has given us mid-year adjustments kind of out of the blue, we added, Chris suggested that we add a 5% buffer in that line. So
There'll be another increase before we're sitting here again,
yeah.
trust me.
So in order to balance that, because if you recall, WPCF is a separate fund and it runs off user fees. So the expenses have to equal what we're projecting revenues to be. So in order to not have to mess with revenues, we decided to reduce the transfer of current year funding coming in to be, that is slated to go to infrastructure reserve by $10,000. And then the one that was slated to go to capital equipment reserve, we reduced that by $10,445, which brings you back to zero. So this particular budget is a 35-cent increase in the sewer user fee, just to kind of put that into perspective.
I just got a text from Sarah that she is having trouble. She didn't find a Zoom link in her email, so either she missed it or something, but is asking if we can resend the link.
I just texted it to her.
Okay,
Or-
great.
I was gonna say, just so you all know, if you sign on as who you are, so Belle can see that, you can always just go in the public link and she can elevate you to panelist.
Great. That's good to know.
So there's gonna be some random budget meeting in the future that Counselor Marks is gonna get a link to, because I gave her a link just on meeting. So
All good.
Can, just out of curiosity, the $4 increase, what is the per ton, just percent, just to kind of get a sense for.
that was 73 and some change.
You're asking what the increase is?
No, the increase is $4.46. That's on top of a $75 ton fee. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, so I've actually got that right here, Chris, if you.
Yeah, Casella's increase was $4.46.
So
So,
that makes the whole, what was the
Yeah.
whole fee?
so the whole fee before was $73.80 a ton. And then we're adding $4.46 and $5 even, so $9.46 to that.
Was there already a state fee established, or is this like a brand new?
It's a brand new fee that's just been implemented.
This is a PFAS fee.
If it makes you feel better, it was supposed to be $15 a ton.
It's supposed to make us feel better. We got a new fee. It's
But now
gonna be
it's only
15. Well,
five.
no, it's only 5. How do you like us now?
So
Yeah.
it will go to $83.29 per ton. And I can remember, Chris, when I started out, it was closer to $35 a ton.
When we first started going up there, it was $35 a ton. The good thing is we're still going through the gate, because a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
And they're paying $250 a ton to take it to Canada, so.
Okay, thanks.
They like us up there because we're a budding neighbor.
We like our sludge.
That, I will say that the WPCF is status quo, except, yeah, some change in the benefit line because of the elections of new staff. Chris has cut about $10,000 out of the chemical line because he's made some pretty incredible process changes that are giving us a better product, but also reducing the need for chemicals. So doing a really nice job with that.
Thanks, Chris.
Well done.
Guy from the school board.
That's probably Sarah.
Yeah.
Suspected.
So there is a significant increase in electricity. And I don't know, Chris, if you want to talk a little bit about why we need so much electricity.
Whole process works because of air. And it takes a lot of energy to push air into the water. It's that simple. The whole process is, it relies on air. We need a lot of it. So the machines that produce the air for us, they run 24/7 and they just use a lot of juice.
And that just reflects an increase in the rate. It's not that our equipment's wearing out and is less efficient now or anything like that.
No, it's mostly rates. There might be a little bit of an uptick. There's one particular pump that we're running faster. That is what has enabled us to cut the chemical budget. I didn't do that so I could cut the chemical budget. I did it to get a better, so the process would work better. But the chemicals that we were adding for alkalinity, we can capture some of that alkalinity back biologically, but it takes air, lots of air. But if I can get the alkalinity back biologically and not have to use chemicals, it's a win-win.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Just.
A lot of that disinfection season, the UV disinfection is pretty energy intensive.
Totally.
You having to treat it now longer, and there was poured last time, you said you were gonna have to, with the new permit, you're gonna have to treat it longer because of global warming.
We will, it's in our new license, which we don't have yet. It's being finalized. Or the one we have now has just been extended. It actually expired in December. So the state's just behind. But we don't have to technically disinfect longer this season because we don't technically have our new license. But when we get it, we'll have to go an additional 30 days on the front and 30 days on the back. So we'll be adding 60 days of running those UV lamps.
Those aren't the electric draw that the pumps and everything, the air pumps are, but
They're not really affected with the disinfection season.
Any other questions on WPCF?
Didn't have a lot of questions on this one. Thanks for what you're doing.
Appreciate it. Great.
So Chris put in his capital plan. For 24, we're trying to keep it as light as we can. But he needs new garage doors at $11,000.
Yeah.
We're looking at the hillside sewer main is in this. I have not put ARPA funds in here. The hillside sewer main that we're thinking about for $250,000 is not the upsides. That is the part that's crumbling that needs to be fixed. And then another 58,000 for Pierce structures, which again are the ones that are crumbling. 20,000 for sewer repair. One of the things that's hit our radar screen that Chris, Rob and I have been talking about that we're going to bring forward and probably look at asking ARPA for. We have a sewer main that comes down through kind of by the tech park connects, goes under Bennett Road. And then connects from there to the interceptor. There's about 800 feet of line that is way undersized and falling apart. And we have some proposed housing and redevelopment within the park that would use water. And Chris right now is telling us we would not have capacity to accept it. And it's not the plant, it's the line. So we would be looking at fixing about 800 feet of Bennett Road pipe. We're not ready to bring that to you as a project at this point. And I'll be honest, Chris does not have the money to do it anyway. We'd have to look at an alternative method of funding.
So let me get that straight. So all three repair projects that you just mentioned, none of those three are in this fund.
Nope.
Okay.
The, what we've maintained in the budget thus far is we've put the hillside project that is not the upsize of the cross-country line, but rather the infrastructure needed to fix for the residents in that area. We are still going to come to you between that and Rob's drainage for some ARPA money there, but it's not as much as before. We're probably going to ask you to think about ARPA for the Bennett Road.
So there's a new line that got put in on Hillside. Right, that we talked about upsizing. We're not talking about that. But there's another line on Hillside.
So the one
that residents
yeah,
don't go into the new one.
no, so the one that we talked about upsizing is actually cross-country that feeds from Park Street down. And by design, it's too small to accept significant development. What we have done is if we're prioritizing, which I think you want us to do, the Bennett Road with review of the pipe and also understanding the development that's actually in permitting in the pipeline for permitting would be a much higher priority project. So what we're saying is leave the hillside upsize alone for right now. We're working with the engineer to see if there are alternatives there. And for this budget right now, let's put in the capital, the pipe that we know is impacting residents where we have a risk of backing up into people's basements. Fair?
Yeah, but there are, I'm still trying to figure, there are two lines on Hillside then.
There's two areas in town that are bottleneck. That one has always been focused on because of all the development that's been happening on Park Street. But there's nothing happening there right now, but there is something happening on Bennett Road in the tech park.
So on Hillside, if you can imagine, Hillside is long. What we're calling Hillside to upsize is actually after the end of Hillside.
Oh, it's not even on Hillside.
No,
Up in
But-
the Treats Falls.
yep.
Backside of
What-
town.
What Chris is talking about upsizing is the piece of Hillside that's closest to North Main. There's a section in there that has some structures and that needs to be fixed. And that's about the same area that Rob is looking at his drainage project. So I think we would try to bid it as one project so we could get a better rate.
And if, with regards to Bennett Road, if someone's doing a development and we have a sewer line that could not technically take that development, we're bound or respond. I know they only, if we do it, they only have to pay a tiny portion or whatever, but are we bound to say, okay, well, we gotta get this fixed because someone's looking to do.
So the answer to that question is a little bit gray, and I'm gonna have to get some advice from people who have done more of this than I. But at the end of the day, I guess the question is, if we could bring 15 or 20 fairly affordable housing units in and develop a stretch of the Tech Park Bennick Road, would we want to say in order to do that, we won't, we just won't. And I think getting the pricing in is going to be important, understanding there is a calculation that is done where you look at the entire flow, design flow for the pipe. And you look at what the new project design flow would be, and it creates a percentage. And they would have to buy into that percentage. But along with it, they would have to pay a connection fee, which is based on the design flow of their project. So if it were a big project, we'd also be getting some connection fee. If you notice in your revenue budget for WPCF, we only put about $100 a year in the revenue line for connection fees. The reason I do that is I want a place in the budget that you don't have to go searching for, because if it is a budgeted item, it automatically shows up in our software system very easily for people to see it. We take the money in on that line and then we immediately transfer it to infrastructure reserve. So we use connection fees to help fund infrastructure reserve. The reason for that is the theory behind a connection fee is that you are buying into the previous user's contributions to make the line. Is your question?
And given the current condition of the line, it would be a priority for us, whether there was new development coming or not. For both condition and capacity.
Right, it's a situation that needs to be done whether this development or not, really.
That's, I guess, more the question. And we want to obviously help people build things, nice things in Orono. But I was curious if it were $10 million to do that, are we forced to do it? And it sounds like we're probably not. It's fitting with what we want to do overall.
I think you could use that, Leo, potentially as a stumbling block if somebody was trying to do something that you didn't want, that you didn't see as beneficial to the
Yeah, I
town.
wasn't even thinking of like how we could necessarily use it, but just like, what are we viable to be able to upgrade infrastructure for development that's not there is sort of what I'm trying to understand. It sounds like we're not, it
Mhm.
fits with what we're doing.
Yeah.
I get you. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes. Sounds like it makes good long-term sense.
Anything else in the WPCF section? I'm not sure if Councilor Marks can join us, if we can hear her. But Sarah, if you have any questions, please let us know.
What comment?
Sure.
Sure. Express an opinion, I guess. I'm concerned, and I think some other people are as well, about the proposed cut in reserves. I think we're sitting on the potential edge of a catastrophic problem if one of the major systems goes down. They're getting older. It's not a brand new system. And if one keeps cutting the contribution to reserves and suddenly has to come up with $50 million, $10, $20, $50 million, not a good position to be in. So speaking as somebody who pays a sewer bill, I would rather be putting more money into the reserves and not running as high a risk of catastrophic shortfall in the future.
So I also just want to put on the revenue side in your heads, we'll talk about this during the budget presentation. We're asking for the 35 cents per 100 cubic feet increase in the user rates to pay for the additional costs. Frederica is not wrong. We're adding to the budget and we're finally being able to put some into reserves, but we are still way under funding reserves. When you look at depreciation, we're depreciating in the WPCF about $600,000 a year. And we're only putting about $110,000 or $20,000 reserve. I'd have to go back.
So we're depreciating 600,000
Yep.
and putting in,
This year, we're gonna put $153,000 into reserves. So it is it's a variance. But when we look at a 35-cent increase, if you're looking at the minimum user for the service, everybody pays for at least 1,200 cubic feet. That's the minimum, a quarter. Right now, that costs $70.80 a quarter. It's going to go to $75 a quarter, so a difference of $4.20 or $16 a quarter or $16.80 a year. I don't have the math right in front of me, but for the University of Maine, this is about a $40,000 increase in their annual sewer bill. And we've made them aware. Yes, we did. We sat through that meeting.
What's a, all right, whatever.
Hmm?
Feels like there's an inside joke, but.
Well, no, it's never fun to go knock on somebody's door and say, oh, by the way. And when we met with them, we were thinking it was anywhere between 35 and 55, so.
We actually have to go tell somebody else it's being raised.
Yeah.
You just mentioned our capital investment 100 and depreciation 600. Are you suggesting, or is it common practice to suggest that your capital investment match depreciation? I mean, depreciation, I've always kind of thought is used as a write-off, obviously.
So we have no write-off here, but for us, it's a rule of thumb in terms of you're using up the life of your product. You're going to have to rebuild that product. When I built a water user rate, which you build different than a sewer user rate, it has to go to the Public Utilities Commission and you have to consider depreciation as part of it. The depreciation was actually built into the rate structure and you were getting a depreciation number from your customers, which funded your reserve.
Was it dollar for dollar?
It started out that way, and then your budgets grew faster than what you would tell what the PUC thought it would grow. And so what happened over time is you whittled away, and when you suddenly had very small numbers going into depreciation, you knew it was past time to redo your rates. But I would say, for me, I think that we should probably be at about the $300,000 mark a year for reserve savings as a balance. 600 would be perfect. 300,000 would be a sweet spot to live
We
in.
just made a big spend last year. Like, didn't we just take that reserve fund down?
So we have been taking that reserve fund down for the last 10 years. And the last 2 years, we have seen large projects. The big project that you're thinking about, we actually ended up funding through a bond. And we have not closed on that bond, so I don't have to pay debt in 24, but we're gonna have to figure that out next year when we close and everything is finalized with that.
We're not allowed to use ARPA funds to build reserves.
No, that's one of the reserves, pensions, and debt payments are 3 of the things you can't use it for.
Okay.
Yeah, I told you 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you very much.
It's all Chris's budget funded. The,
Activity in the,
Yeah.
it's all funded, but through activity in the WPCF. It could be renting our equipment out, it could be grants, it could be user fees. The majority of it is user fees.
but no property taxes.
Not a dime of property tax.
Way to
And in
go.
fact,
It was set up that way.
Chris pays the town $138,000 a year for administrative functions like the billing and the liens and paying his people, and he pays the premium, but we do the work. And facilities, Rob's shop gets $2,000 a year. Well, we get $2,000 a work for Rob's $2,000 a year for Rob's work. For the furnace stuff and other assistance that facilities gives the shop. But WPCF was really designed to be self-contained and operate on its own fees.
Is that how it is in other towns too, just structurally with WPCFs, or is that our job?
Some other communities, the wastewater is a district, like the water company is. So they just strictly user fees and pretty much the same revenue stream. But they're just not a department of the town like it. But just when they built the plan here in Orono, the city council at the time wanted it to be a department and not a district.
There are towns that will subsidize the wastewater with tax dollars. And unlike water, which you cannot, even if it's set up as a department of the town, you cannot subsidize the town the other way. The user fees have to be used for water. There are a couple of times that sewer departments have had really nice reserves that towns have gone in and snatched, which is not a good practice, but
Can't have it.
no. Chris wouldn't let me do that.
Neither for Rika, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sit her after you.
That's why you sit through the meetings.
Okay,
So people are fine with me putting together a presentation that talks about a 35-cent increase.
Yeah, and that's decided by council or is it PUC?
Absolutely. Nope. Nope, this is not a regulated entity.
Oh,
Don't give the PUC any ideas. I lived through that once with water, never again.
I'm comfortable with that. So,
Yeah.
We had at the beginning of our Public Works Infrastructure section, a really long and detailed report about goals, mandates, resources, asset management, staffing, a whole bunch of things. So maybe before we dive into the budget lines, we can see if we have any questions about that. The report sort of sets up the whole section.
the asset management software on this sheet that we were given as well. And it says 10,000 on here. So it's 14,004.
Yep, it's split.
But if it were, as far as cut or eliminated, it says 10 grand, but that would be 14.
It would be
But it-
10 grand.
On ours. Gotcha.
And this is one we really do have to keep separate.
I have questions about that specifically. I don't know if we want to get into detail about that or not, but I guess I'd like to understand how it's done today, who does it today, and all of that. It might be a long meeting, actually, so I don't know if that's a good time. But maybe it is.
So can I reframe the question a little bit to maybe make it a little shorter?
Yeah.
Hey, Rob. Can you briefly talk about asset management and why you're asking for $14,000 a year software?
Well, I think asset management in general, from what I've seen over the last 15 years and what I've learned with what happened before I joined the team here, has been something that has been done sporadically well, but not really cohesively well by various departments. So what I think the town lacks is sort of this cohesive asset management strategy that spans all the different kinds of assets that we have: infrastructure, fleet, facilities primarily, and beginning to create an inventory and ways to maintain records and begin to develop plans that go in detail beyond the 5-year plan that we work really hard on. Is going to require data. So what this asset management software will do is create one single location for every asset that the town owns can be located. Right now, we don't have that. We have departmental level spreadsheets that get sort of. So where when you take two things together from the concatenated together, right? And so there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect timing wise, whatever it might be. Different department heads look at assets differently. But also maintenance records are kept in paper, on spreadsheets, on some just not kept at all in places. And so this would create an opportunity to generate workflow. So right now we don't have townwide work order system. So Public Works, I manage that by using spreadsheets and trying to make sure that I don't let things slip through the cracks. You know, you get a pothole call over here, you get a streetlight call over here. How do we maintain that? I keep a lot of lists. And then try to manage a spreadsheet that is as complete as I can keep it. But as work is being completed, I try to make sure that I can keep those things updated. You know, and things are getting missed. Things are getting, maintenance records aren't as complete as they probably should be or need to be to really generate data on where specifically our maintenance efforts are going. And in the infrastructure side of things, it's a little bit better than I would say in the facilities world where that is really a little bit further behind in terms of record keeping and an understanding of the true span of what the assets that we have are. So really, this is an opportunity to create a more comprehensive way to manage our assets that will lead us in the direction of better planning and better asset management.
And so when you all ask us for information, the information that you're asking for at times is completely legit and you should want it. What maybe you don't understand is that it's not a matter of hitting two buttons and being able to pull that out. It's work stopping for departments to pull pieces of paper and figure out who is the holder of what piece of information. And for a long time, decisions weren't really hugely data driven, which is what we got to last year in the work planning session. You want to be able to look at data driven decisions. We've got to have a single place that we can put the data into to spit out. There?
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that this is also a place with planning that we can level out the spikes in the capital investments to make it easier for taxpayers to fund it, make it more consistent for staff to know what projects they need to come in, and ultimately save the town money when we're not trying to fix things that are truly broken and able to maintain them and turn them over when they should turn. There?
Does the utilization of this kind of software require an administrator or some kind of clerk? Is it going to require a new position to work this software?
If anything, Jeff, it's going to make it. So right now, primarily, I do most of the facilities and all of the facilities and infrastructure stuff. But this is going to take some things off plates throughout the town and make my work with record keeping a lot easier. Because there'll be ways that staff, you know, my leadership staff will be able to interact with the work orders and actually put in whatever maintenance they did that day. And it'll go right to the asset that we tied the work order to. So I'll be doing less. I'll be doing less data entry and more analyzing, which is, yeah. So if anything, it's going to make it more efficient for staff.
And this is something that Rob and Zach would work very closely with because we have the GASB general fixed asset listing that we're required to keep, which is a little bit different than what Rob's got, but we can filter it for that, which means that Zach will be able to pick up purchases as they come through and it won't be as much of a manual process.
And if I could just chime in from the ether, I manage the insurance schedules. And one of the things that we have a difficult time with is making sure that our every asset that we actually have is properly insured and that the insurance company has all the information on it. So this is something that I am kind of hoping for, to make sure that we have a complete listing with the insurance company as well.
That's helpful to hear from the ether. One of my questions was sort of how many staff people would be interfacing with this software, and have we checked with everyone that they're excited to, clearly some folks are like excited to learn a new software because this has some advantages and will make some people's lives easier. But it also seems like the kind of thing that will work best if everyone who's in charge of this kind of inventorying in their head is on board and wants this software. Have we gotten sort of consensus from all the department heads and folks?
So what we have is consensus that the system we have right now is broken and
Yeah.
is taking an inordinate amount of time. If you ask fire captains, are they going to be thrilled to learn a new piece of software? No. But will the fire chief be thrilled when I say they want to, we need to see how much more the ladder truck is costing us. Can you go back and pull 5 years of data? Because in your budget line, all you see is vehicle repair for the fire department. You don't see by which vehicle it is, and that's not sub-accounted in our financial software. And so when we want to know that, the chief is literally going through invoices because we code on the invoice which vehicle it was for. So the chief really thrilled. I also, things don't get this far in the town. I don't know about other organizations, but things don't get to this level without having buy-in from staff. And is it 100%? Maybe not, but it's enough that makes it happen. And right now, I will say finance picks up the slack in many of these places. And I think Zach would love to have a more cohesive way to pick up the slack.
Have we talked about, has there been another like budget tool that you're looking at as well? Or how many of these are, I mean, it sounds very logical to me, and I feel like I should put my credit card down on the table and, just, you go, Rob, we'll get it. But what is there another budget piece to, like a budget software that we've talked, feels like you've got challenges with I know there's sometimes challenges pulling stuff out, particularly when you get kind of, I won't say obscure, but unexpected requests for data and things like that. So what's the?
So when we look at our financial software package, Trio, I'm not going to say Trio is lovely, and Rob would be the first one to say it's not. But Trio manages multiple interfaces that not every piece of software would interface. Like we couldn't use QuickBooks here.
Right.
There are some tiny towns that can. We're just a little too complex for that.
Okay.
When you take a step up to the Munis or the it's a step up, but to the other software, it's a significant dollar investment and would be an incredible training feat for a staff that is already feeling quite tapped out.
Yeah.
So when you think about Trio, when you go down and you register your motor vehicle, Trio is built to interface with the state so that you're registering your vehicle through a process that is really driven by the state and then dumps into our system. And InfoMe, which is how everybody pays for their credit, with credit cards, it's a state contract. All of that flows in through Trio.
Okay.
So Trio is not something, all of our tax collection, Vision, which is our assessing software, dumps into Trio. So it's not a simple, just the books. But the good news is when all that stuff flows into the books, it means that there's less opportunity for people to flip numbers. So Trio is not perfect, and it sometimes will I've run reports and had half the budget show up. You just know you've got to get out and restart the program and run it again. The problem that is frustrating, I think, council right now is that Trio is built on a database that has a structure. Everything is built by fund, department, division, expense, object. And it can, on that sliding, structure, it can roll things up or collapse things, but it can't take one element of that out and compare with, I can do it in the current year. I could say I want all of my expenses and it will do it for 1 year, but I don't write a budget in the same piece of the software that I have to physically go through a process to roll the budget into the current year, where you have some of that.
But this asset management tool is this the one kind of?
It's gonna be
tool that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it'll integrate with our existing GIS platform too, so there's some collaboration between those two systems that will be beneficial and ultimately is going to could lead to some opportunities to have some public facing interaction too.
Oh, cool. You put stuff on the website or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one also, as Rob says, it talks to GIS. So that also means like when they go out to do manhole inspections and stuff that we already have staff set up with collector apps for manhole inspections and sewer flushing, where they take pictures and rate pipes and do that kind of stuff. That will flow into this. That's not like another manual process to get it there.
Sure, yes.
Yes, I knew that. I'm not saying it's
Can be
simple.
It's not just the blink of the eye, but set it up that way.
like a salesperson's got to rob and.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've looked at several different platforms, and this one happens to be with the same firm that provides us with our permitting software too and code enforcement, so it seemed to be the most economical and easiest to sort of transition into.
I'm a little leery that it sounds like there's kind of we're going from not no system, but a sporadic system, I think is what you said. So.
Inconsistent. Different levels of.
And it's like, it's not gonna be magic. No software ever is. It's garbage in, garbage out. So maybe it's a shiny toy initially and people are like, hey, okay, I'm gonna commit to this and get acclimated with it, set it up. But I'm a bit skeptical that it's looked at as like a holy grail that that we end up in Jeff's question was my question too. It sounds like an administrator somewhere at some point, and maybe it's going to be Belle because she seems to take those all in, I guess. But it sounds like it's going to need a resource. Kind of, you're saying it's not. It's going to need less, but I think it's going to need. It's going to require time from a lot of people to be interacting and putting information in. Like, and I do think. Why wouldn't we do that with?
Right now,
We're doing it with paper and putting it
notebooks
in
and
files.
spreadsheets and
which
it
then-
gets filed away and there's no way to find it. And when I need to find it, it takes me an hour to find it. And
So you're not maintaining any spreadsheets or anything like that.
I am. But it's a long list of things that we've done over the last 10 years.
Is the idea that it's like handheld and that's easy, that's why it's gonna get in there easier or something? Because I do think, again, I think people will look at this like a holy grail and it's not, it's gonna be work, just like it would be work to maintain consistent spreadsheets now, that would be work too. Well, it wouldn't cost 14 grand a year. I mean,
So
maybe it's less work, maybe it isn't.
the problem is we are putting that work in right now to maintain all these individual systems that when it comes time to double check it against our GASB listing or the insurance listing, everybody's work stops to go back through their paper files to make sure everything is right. And This, when you talk about trying to save money long-term, trying to make sustainable financial decisions that stop these spikes, having that information of when we should be paving that road. Because the longer you wait to pave the road, the more expensive it gets to pave the road, not just in inflation, but in the scope of the job. And I don't see it as the panacea. I see it as taking all of these incredible minds that we have and all of the experience that allows us to kind of sort of get away with spreadsheets in 15 different places and put it in one place so that when we're not here, life is going to continue and you're not going to have to go to Chris and say, Chris, when was the last time this happened? You've been here long enough. Because pretty soon Chris is going to retire. And then the next mind at WPCF has been here for 8 years. So, you know, council gets to make the choices, but it's really hard when the world expects this level of output and our input is still incredibly antiquated.
I'm gonna bring all sorts of scrutiny and questions about like directions, thing like policies and things. But if you tell us you need it, I feel like you need it, and gotta give a lot of discretion to the staff. There's tools you think you need to do your job, and we have high expectations for you to do your job, and it feels like $14,000 and tell us you need it. I kind of feel like you gotta have your back.
I think
Stuff
I'm
like
with
that.
Dan on this one, despite personally having been burned by like lots of new software at the university that didn't make my life as an
Yeah.
administrator.
You can see my
easier.
QuickBooks account.
Like, I
Yeah.
trust you that you've done your homework and be supportive of this one.
This sounds really valuable. And this is what, a $14,000
Year.
a year? Yeah, that was gonna be my next question.
So the one thing that the subscriptions do that are nice is they're cloud-based, and so you can use your handheld stuff, you can access them from different places, you get a seat that multiple people can use, that kind of stuff. And as they make improvements to it, you get those improvements, so it doesn't go out of season. The problem is that instead of spending $30,000 or $40,000 for a piece of software that you never have to pay for until it stops working, it is an annual fee.
And are they able to raise those rates at all? Or is there some sort of contract?
We would be in a 3-year, this one's set up for a 3-year agreement. So they would.
And
we
in the
renegotiate.
event that after 3 years, it isn't what we hoped, do we get to keep the database in some way?
You know, the data.
You own the data, good.
We could-
Great.
We would end up dumping it into some kind of a readable, we would have to
Yeah,
turn it into GIS
yeah.
data somehow or something like that sort of.
Yeah, and with iWork, which is they also do our code software, which we said was gonna be awesome, which I will say is awesome.
Just got a permit for my fence.
Yeah,
Give me
and
an
you know,
8-footer. It could be-
the best part of that is I could see that.
Yeah,
Sitting at my desk, I could log in with my access and see what permits are out there. So if people call with questions, I don't have to go down and wait for the code officer to be back. But it also allows us to sort that data faster than we could before. We put permits online faster than we could before. So
It does work. The
Yeah.
permit online thing does work
Yeah.
well. And same company.
and with that one, whenever we stop, they give us our data in I want to say CSV, but it's not CSV. It's whatever that file. A file that is pretty universal. Bell's training me.
so it's the same company that does the permit.
Yep.
Okay.
And when Rob says he looked at a lot, I made him look at a lot even before, and when we put it down 2 years ago, this is something that we've been trying to balance for the last several years, whether or not to bring the request forward.
And you don't have to go out for multiple requests or.
So we probably would, because of the cost here, it probably, he's growling.
I don't know, I'm not suggesting, I'm
Yeah.
not saying do it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's unless council
It's up to you guys.
wants
Can we
to,
move it if you want?
you can, you absolutely can. It's, you could sole source and it's under 20,000 a year, so you're.
Okay.
I'm in favor of including it in the budget and. Yeah, I made a compelling argument for that, but looking forward to seeing the results of it. I think it'd be cool. All right, anything else? Their descriptions are the role and of the environmental services coordinator with some information on service level change related to electricians. Or information from the front part of this document before we dive into the budget lines.
So I think the thing that's being far more pause than we were just discussing is the proposal for the position of an electrician. I mean, I see the value here and I understand that like all of this, we'd be paying more efficiently for these things for sure. But I was wondering sort of what it would be the comparative sort of basic cost to us between sort of what we're doing right now. And like, how much more is it gonna cost us overall? Despite I understand it would be a more efficient use of our money.
Yeah, I mean, having a person on staff, maintaining equipment, it's gonna be more expensive than what we're spending now. Those costs are rising. We spend about $26,000 a year on streetlights. I've spent 25, so it's closer to $50,000 or $60,000 in just brought cost between the use of contractors and materials that we bought over the course of this fiscal year.
We'd only be looking at
Electrical things.
contractors, not materials, to do any kind of a comparing on this, correct?
Yeah,
I see the value in adding this position, but as we keep talking about trying to tighten our belts in various places, I wonder if it's the year for it. No.
When you say streetlights, what do you,
so streetlights, lighting, traffic lights are
but we spend that on having them repaired, or we've added lights and
It's-
stuff?
so streetlights, 27.5 is our budget for the electricity that goes to them. And the cost for materials and labor to maintain.
But that cost of labor to maintain them was based on a contract with the city of Bangor. So
Yeah.
if we want to rewind, several years ago, I don't remember the exact year, we went through a lengthy process of inventorying our streetlights and evaluating them. And then we bought them from Versant. I don't
Mara at
know,
the time.
it was Amera. And we had them all retrofitted with LEDs to save electricity. And we own them. We are spending far less on electricity, which allowed us to put the maintenance contract in there and still save considerable amount on electricity. It was working great. And then the city of Bangor went through their own internal issue where they are running through electricians for a variety of reasons. And talking with the city of Bangor, this is not an issue that they're going to see a short-term fix for. They're not sure they're going to bring back the same level of capacity. And so they are not, I serve with a Bangor Public Works Director on a board. And we had a lengthy conversation to make sure I understood correctly that he is, if they have capacity, he wants to help the communities, but he does not see that coming back and is not sure that they are going to fund the same level of capacity that would allow it.
So the reason our electrical infrastructure is an important one. I mean, it's streetlights has always been the hangnail of my existence. It's just this constant You know, we have 670 something of them, so those, when you have 600 of anything, it's gonna be 10 that don't work right now, right? So because of where they are, we can't just go change the light bulb. Now they're LEDs, so you change drivers and fixtures and things like that, but so you need a lift truck and a certified electrician to go fix that. Those are, whether in the public or private sector, at high demand right now. So I can't, when there's one street light out that I'm aware of, that I've been made aware of, I can't just call them and have, I need to kind of create a list. I gotta make it worthwhile for them to just come to Orono for a day and work on streetlights. So that's, you know, 5 or 6, 10 would be ideal for them. So sometimes that means there's one streetlight out on Grove Street. And that's the first one on the list. Now, and depending on, I mean, I'm not gonna let it go. I'm not gonna let it go a year. I'm not gonna let it go 6 months, you know, but that's the challenge is, okay, I've got my 8 streetlights. When can you come? So I called them in March. They're coming in a couple weeks to do a day's worth of streetlight work. I have, with the current contractor that we're using for traffic signals, I have an emergency rate that they can jump on and come, and that's, sometimes it's just not even worth it. You know, if streetlights, if traffic lights have to flash for a little while, that's a safe condition. It's terribly inefficient. The pedestrian crossings don't work, but it's a safe condition. That's just how it has to be, because I don't have any, but by law, I'm not even allowed to open a cabinet, because inside those controller cabinets is live instrumentation. So the primary power is coming into the breakers, and those wires are right there, and the controller is right there, and all this, the relays and switches that let the traffic lights do their thing are in that box. So that is something over time somebody could be trained to work on. And I could bring in a licensed electrician up to speed on a large portion of it. There would be training, so there would be a, you know, if we were to fund this year, there would be a period of time where we would sort of have to bring them up to speed on the more technical parts. A municipal electrician is different than typical somebody who would work for Hampton Electric who pulls wire in houses. It's just a little more complicated. Then, especially when you start talking about the work that happens down at the treatment plant, WPCF has a very complicated control system that needs to be worked on. Luckily we have a really reliable person that works with Chris, but that's not going to be forever. And replacing that person. So having somebody in-house on staff that is working to become familiar with all the nuances of the treatment plant is kind of important right now, I think. But, you know, and it is, this request is here because of all the services that we deliver. This is probably the one that I know for sure we're not delivering, not meeting expectations of the community. We're not unsafe. I mean, we're keeping up, I guess. But if it takes me, that light's out right up there. Okay. It probably either it needs a driver or a fixture. It's going to take me 2 weeks to fix that at best. Because the person that I use for that kind of work is really busy. And I've got 5 or 6 other things, EV chargers, other stuff that's probably higher priority than that one right there. So if I get them for 4 hours, do we want to change that light or do we want to set up an electrical service? You know, so
Yeah, if we have the.
it's really, you know, it took us 6 months to get the bridge lights working. And that was just because it was, well, just rotting infrastructure, but to finally find where things, and then we fix one thing and then the next thing breaks. Well, now I can't go down there and try to find that. It's not by any public infrastructure, any public electrical infrastructure, whether it be in a building or out on the street, has to be worked on by a licensed electrician. That's the law.
Master.
I
Master.
thought with the bridge that
So
we weren't sure if something was buried or where that box went. That's what I think you mentioned back when, obviously I was the one belly aching about those lights being,
Mhm.
but
What
I
it
thought
turned
something
out to
maybe
be-
got buried.
what it turned out to be was a junction box underneath the bridge, completely underneath the bridge, where at some point, another electrician had junction box was metal and it just melted away with salt decay. And so somebody had put a piece of rubber tubing over a splice, daubed it with silicone, and it worked when he left. And it worked for however many years, but stuff like that's really hard to find. And you're paying, when we bring that contractor in, we paid $2,500 that day to have that fixed. Because it took them that long to diagnose the issue, finally track it down, then
So,
half hour to fix it.
so what did we pay out for, not equipment, but what did we pay out last year for contract help?
I would have to, it's probably half of, I don't know, we have 15,000-20,000 total.
And what would you do with the, like, what would the electrician do when they're not doing the stuff that you use a vendor for now?
Well, I mean,
Could we service them out to other towns and, you know, make some revenue? back?
there's,
Yeah.
honestly, if we started tomorrow, it'd be a while before I'd have to worry about that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
there's a bunch of things that it goes back to asset management, so we would need to begin to create regular inspection plans. So we would create a plan for this person to inspect all of our electrical infrastructure on a regular period of time. Help me generate the asset listing for all of our electrical infrastructure. And if there really is no electrical work to be done, I've already reached out to the school. Bill said that they have the same kinds of issues and would be open to sharing that position, or at least, you know, we could set a rate for what we would charge the school. So that would keep that person busy too. But
So,
based on the way things have gone and are going, I don't anticipate a ton of free time for this person, at least first year or two, for sure.
so I don't want to kind of walk over the WPCF issue, because we're trying to be a little bit proactive here. When I was in Brownville, and granted that was a decade ago, we had the same kind of electrician that we have here, which is a guy all by himself turning a wrench, making with several districts working together. And when he decided he was done, he gave us 6 months' notice, which is great, but we could not find anybody locally to do it because it's highly specialized work. And we ended up having to bypass Bangor and go to Portland to be able to get somebody who had the time and the specialization to be able to come up and work on our pumps and that kind of stuff. And instead of spending $5,000 or $6,000 a year, 10 years ago, Piscataquis County, so we were spending $25,000 and $30,000 because we were paying so much to get them there. What I don't want is when we talk to Chris about what's out there when Mike decides to retire, we're gonna have a handful of departments in the same exact position we are, trying to scramble for expertise that is really thin. And it would make sense to me to try to build that capacity.
How old is their person right now? Maybe that's rude to ask.
I think that's rude to ask.
Okay.
Here already.
It is indicated that there's a short time that it
Window.
continues, that he'll
I would add that you know, as much as Rob needs an electrician, we would benefit from one at the plant.
Yeah, I guess I'm just still stuck on the ROI. I get it. It would be way more convenient, obviously, to be able to dispatch and where. So I get that, but I mean, if we're spending 15 to 20,000 we're probably 120,000 all in on somebody that we'd be hiring, plus $135,000 bucket truck that's in here. That to me is a tough hour. I don't think there's an ROI personally. That's my take. Did you say that there's no, you have to be an electrician to change a light bulb in these street lights?
Not change a light bulb, but. So a lot of these lights don't have bulbs anymore. They're,
I mean, LED.
yeah.
Do you not call it, is that not called a light bulb or? I mean,
It's diode, but-
do you need to be an electrician to change these LEDs?
Yep.
You do. Not,
To change a fixture out or put a new ballast on a fixture, and it's gonna require access to wires. If I go home, I can change an outlet at my house. And I know how to do it. And do it right. Do that one over there, but I would be breaking the law if I change that. outlet.
okay, but so for these, maybe even the old, well, I guess the old style lights maybe were bulbs and you probably. could
If you
change.
can screw a light bulb in and
Yeah.
out, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these where they unplug, because I mean. A lot of times they're set up with an actual plug, so you're not really exposed to wires. I have no idea what these.
Yeah,
things are.
we can change light bulbs there.
But not on. Or you can.
On the
Yes.
poles?
Yeah.
No, well, first, we can't get to them because we don't have a bucket truck. But secondly, no, we couldn't open up that
Right,
fixture.
yeah, that's what-
There's no
that's what I'm
bulb in
talking
there.
And when you talk about the pedestrian signals that drive people crazy because we get them fixed and then somebody gets a little bit too rambunctious with them and they break. Rob knows exactly how to fix those and he can't.
We already have a bucket truck in Orono. I got an email from Bell. Thank you, Bell, today about saying that Orono Maine has the bucket truck. Is there any
So we asked,
Yeah, so I had a conversation with facilities.
split the cost per bucket truck with them or something?
No, they're. At least my conversation with facilities was that their staff was too busy to take on any work for us.
In that bucket truck all the time. I'm talking about, they're
I'm
all
not gonna dive into what,
I know.
how Jeremy uses his people.
Right.
I had the conversation.
If we fund this position, can we find a qualified master electrician to take the job?
I hope so, yes.
But what I'm saying is, I don't want to put it in the budget, tax people for the money, and then if we think we're going to be in the same situation we are with fire and police and everything else.
so part of when we put stuff like this together is we do some surveying in the community. And we know that there would be a few potentials that have said a municipal electrician job might be very interesting to them to have solid hours with benefits. And not be in.
Probably no.
Can I just say, it's awesome and we're very lucky. It's clear how much you want to provide a high level of service to our community. And it's just, you bring something forward like this, it's clear that that's what's behind the request. I can sense your frustration, the fact that somebody on Grove Street lives next to a light that's not going to get replaced for several weeks because they're the first one to go out. So I just thank you for that. So whatever happens with this request, I very much appreciate why it's coming forward and what's behind it. So thank you.
I would echo that. I know I'm sort of the most vocally skeptical so far of this line. And skeptical maybe is the wrong word, because I do really appreciate thought that's going into this.
Yeah, and that's why I presented it as an increase in level of service. This is a decision for you to make.
Yeah.
Here's, and so yes or no, that's up to
Yeah.
you all, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make
it's
sure that I
an
was.
opportunity that I couldn't let go by.
Yeah, appreciate you articulating the benefits. I think I'm inclined to, at this point, I'll look forward to sleeping on it, but I'm inclined to agree with Leo, that I'm not sure in this year's budget cycle, it makes sense as a return on investment for me personally, but keep thinking about it.
Bill, did we have an online comment?
I think it would have been me, Jeff. I did start to say something maybe.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I don't have a picture. I'm not sure why. My video's on my end, but nice to see you all. Rob, thank you so much. I really wanted to second what Dan said. Super much appreciate the amount of thought and care and like concern for our community. On a side note, I can offer my scouting services under the bridge. I swim under there every day, 6 months of the year. So next time when you're looking for the electric box, tell me and I'll tell you where I see it. I just wanted to ask because my sound cut out at one point. When you were talking about the financial numbers, did I hear Leo recap that it was about 20,000 this year in contractors we paid? Did I get that correctly, Rob, or did I missed when you spoke, my sound cut out?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's what I would say roughly is, and I can research that and get the actual number for you.
If you feel like,
Either way.
if you feel like it's ballpark, I think.
If we're
Yeah,
talking about
ballpark's
return,
good.
there's not going to be, this is one of those situations where I'm bringing something to you that
Yeah.
doesn't actually create a lower level of investment.
Yeah.
There's no,
It would be
I'm
a,
not arguing that one way or another. It's the level of service increase that
Understood.
to decide if it's worthwhile or not.
Rob, my second
So-
question, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just was gonna say, my second question was, if we didn't feel like we could fund this year, would you be interested in doing some more dialoguing with the RSU and, or maybe another town nearby to see if they wanted to split a position with us for the next budget year? I just am curious. I like Dan's idea about whether we could find a way to contract out. I heard you say you think you've got too much for them for the first couple of years, but I just was curious, would you rather get half a person that was in-house down the line if we can't pass it this year? Or do you really feel like, no, we really need a full person if we do this?
I think it would be, I mean, just like anything, we would have to prioritize what our work is, and it'd be better than not having any, you know, so.
Okay.
I would be
Thank
open
you.
to what's.
Thank you. Sorry, I have no picture. Happy to see you all.
It's okay, but Sarah, we will not be able to see if your hand is raised. You're just gonna have to sing out.
Okay, will do.
Any other discussion on this item or anything else from the introductory material?
I guess I'm glad to see how successful it seems like the environmental services coordinator position is going. Bringing in plenty of money in grants. Doing
So
lots
if
of really
do
interesting
you
work.
have, are you comfortable with the consensus seemingly saying that? Or am I right in saying that the consensus at the table is that people don't feel that this is a service level increase that we can afford this year?
that's my feeling on it.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to leave this section to be unclear. I just.
Yeah.
And does that, the not funding this position, does that also eliminate the necessity for the purchase of the bucket truck? Okay, so they go hand in hand.
Jeff,
Maybe so.
can I?
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's me. Can I ask a question on the bucket truck? I was confused when I looked in the capital investments pages. There was one truck listed on page 3, which said bucket truck we need for the new electrician. And then there was something else listed on page 8, which also said needed for the electrician. Am I confused on that, Rob?
I don't have the page numbers, so I'm not. So there would be, the electrician would have been mentioned in a few different lines related to the personnel. There was some, you know, obviously salary and benefits associated with it. Some increases in personal protective equipment, some specialized equipment that we need to look at. And
This
then-
was a, this one was, there was one that said bucket truck and gave a price of 125,000 on what I have is page 3. Maybe someone else could show you from their binder. And then on page 8, there's another that says utility vehicle with aerial lift. And
They're
then,
both
on-
same.
Is that the revenue versus the,
I don't know,
one's the,
It says capital equipment.
it's under
Capital.
capital equipment, both of them. And that one says this equipment will be necessary to maximize the utility of the added electrician position. So I couldn't figure out, are these two different trucks or is it a
No,
duplicate? I don't know.
we funded the, for the purposes of this, we funded the bucket truck out of the infrastructure reserve, so you would see that its own line up in the reserve section, but then the expense would also be down in the FY 24. So you should see it twice, one as a revenue and one as a
But
expense.
on page 8, the narrative for the project, where was the other place that you saw it, Sarah?
It's page 3 and page 8 under the capital equipment. Well, the beginning part of capital investments, this page 3 and then page 8. And they're both those really lovely description pages. Rob, by the way, thank you for these. These were kind of amazing and wonderful with the project priority levels and just a lot of helpful information, but they each have a full page explaining them. And they
So-
both, yeah.
That is my mistake. Rob initially gave page 3 and then replaced it with page 8, which you'll notice is much more
Okay.
robust. I just forgot to take the placeholder out.
Okay, so ignore page 3. Thank you.
So the one that says we need one,
Yes.
We need it.
that was a placeholder.
I joke that everybody now got to see. Sorry.
Sophie, can you, on the council budget exercise sheet, can you help me understand what this is saying? Because it says a revenue reduction of 135. So expense reduction, 231, revenue reduction of 135.6, net change. What is that saying?
Yeah. Do you want to speak to it? That's your
Leo, what
word.
page are you on?
I'm on the council budget exercise reduction thing. So
Thanks.
I don't want to say that's not what they are. But
So in the budget, we funded the purchase of the truck with reserve funds. So when we talked about actual impact to the tax rate, you have to take that reserve funding
okay.
out. The actual impact to the general fund is that total amount less what we were gonna take out of reserves.
So the only thing I wonder about here, Rob, is, and I just want to go back to that.
But should we on that?
I'm on the reduction. So I'm a little bit concerned, Rob, because if we don't have this person, I think you need to go back and add some money into your contractor services and lines. So I don't know that you're gonna get the full net change to the budget. I think you're probably gonna get 96,346 less what Rob's gonna have to put in the budget. Because one of the things I'm seeing, I'm not tracking total gross, but for example, I just got a bill for WPCF for that electrician that normally would be about $1,800. That was closer to 6,000. It was a little bit more work, but one of the things I'm noticing with Rob's bills is they're getting bigger. So I really need you to go back and
That is true. The cost of the work that we're having done is more expensive even than what we were spending at the beginning of the fiscal year versus today.
So where is that contracted service? It's contracted services line, basically, is that?
It goes all kinds of places. So if we're working on traffic lights, it goes to the traffic lights line. Working on street lights, goes to the street lights line. If it's on and capital investment infrastructure, it's gonna go into
that
the
project.
capital infrastructure line. We may have funded it through, if we were on a project, so say the lights that we added at Brownies Beach, that was funded from a couple different sources, so it's gonna be there. That's why I say it'd be hard for me to tell you exactly. You'd have to look expense by expense and I could find it, but
So
just need to be.
what I am suggesting is if what I'm hearing is you don't want to add, you don't want to increase the service level, I am gonna ask Rob to go back and amend his budget to add in the contractual services that we're going to need. So you are going to see, we will publish a new public works budget. I don't think it ends up, does it end up? We already took the grant lights out. Grant
Grant
road
lights
lights
are
out, because we're gonna do that this year.
Can't find that sheet.
Yeah,
What we call it.
so I don't remember. Oh, this one, budget exercise. So it's we're gonna have to net, and I don't want to do that on the fly.
Right.
So we'll get.
Can
you
I
a new
ask
one.
though, did you go through and remove those kinds of expenses from this current budget?
No,
So,
what
I
I'm
guess-
saying is if we're not gonna bring somebody in-house, I would anticipate that we're gonna end up with more contracted services. This coming
Yeah,
year.
but you didn't zero them out. You didn't zero them
You
out.
never took them out. You mean, you didn't take them out of
No.
what we're looking at to begin
I'm not
with?
gonna go in and double them, but it's probably gonna be more than what we would have asked for in a regular year.
And the 96, I mean, is that benefits and all that stuff or no? I don't think,
96 what? What are we talking about?
I thought it was the 96, which I think was what you budgeted for the.
The reduction.
Okay, yeah, the salary, yeah, that's benefits, all that will come out.
But that includes benefits and
96 and
It's
some
gonna be
change.
$35 an hour base rate.
Hey. I am work time. I'm gonna ask if everybody's ready to move on to look at specific sections of the budget and we start with Public Works General Maintenance. Which in my binders, pages 13 and 14.
I was curious on page 14, the amount that we spent so far this year has way exceeded our initial pre-maintenance budget.
Tree maintenance line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on 15,000. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So this year the tree inventory went really well. So, we got a grant, hire an intern to actually go out and create the tree map that we talked about. Through that process, we discovered a lot of trees that hadn't been either noticed or found and really needed to be taken down and maintained. And so we ended up with just a lot more work than in a typical year because we literally looked at every single public tree in the town. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not necessarily saying we need to make an increase this year, because that should settle back down.
So the thing about trees, just to understand is once Rob is aware that there is a tree that is dying, which then creates potential hazards. If we don't take care of it, we then become liable for the damage that it causes. And some of the damage could be significant. You know, we've seen that it wasn't a public tree. We didn't know it was dying, but it was responsible for a massive accident, with a lot of injury. And we need to, number one, not injure our people, but number two, that would be a huge hit to the check.
so an enterprising arborist could scoot around town and say, hey,
But you,
now you know.
yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Now we've got a really robust sense of trees in town, and I really appreciated that
Yeah.
report that came out of that too. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot.
We go to Public Works Winter Maintenance. I'm on page 15. Thank you. I'm just gonna go until we hit stuff that's redundant.
So do you want to talk about the suggestion that Rob made, which was if you're looking to decrease service level, we have the two individuals truck.
So that's the Yorkshire initiative. That's what we're gonna call it.
No,
No.
no, call that the council
That
initiative.
is me being doing my responsibility.
Thank you
Not
for
gonna take
being
the Jewish option.
responsible and I think it makes sense to chat about it.
Oh, I will say, so you don't even know this, I just got the bid results for salt. It's $77. If we choose to, council chooses to accept it. Which is $3 less than what is in that budget for 1,500 tons, so. Technically, you can cut $3 at $1,500, $4,500 out of the budget at that point.
Pay for the pool,
The bids, I just got the email on the bids at
right?
5 o'clock.
So do you want it at 4,500 or 4,000?
It'd be 4,500, 3 times
You're
1,500.
comfortable with that?
1,500 is the number I'm comfortable.
Okay, all right. I will do that right now.
That is line 650,434.
So yeah, there was an increase in that line because we were a little uncertain what the price was going to be. I budgeted 80, it came in at 77.
Rob, I have a question on the,
Yes, go ahead.
I had a question. What Sophie just brought up was about one of the possible cuts for the plowing, correct?
Yep.
I just had a question about that. You mentioned two different things. One person would be less a truck and it would take an hour longer for each route to get plowed. Am I remembering that correctly? And the other one was about sidewalks and parking lots. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that would all be, the overall service level that we would be able to provide would be reduced. So
Right.
everything, for maintenance from time it starts to snow till the salt barrels are filled, everything would go down.
And do we have any like ability to choose which part of that service? I mean, I know the last time we didn't plow sidewalks, that didn't go over very well in town. And I felt like it was very unsafe for people on the bridge, especially. I live on the other side of the bridge and I had kids walking on snowbanks that were so high that their ankles were like at the top of the bar after one big snowstorm. So I know other people in town also were very scared about the safety of sidewalks. If we only eliminated one instead of two of these positions, would we have the ability to say we're not cutting our sidewalk plowing and our parking lot plowing? We're just going to be slower on our street routes? Or is that not something we have the ability to control?
So the way our winter maintenance response works is the number one priority is the streets. Plow the snow off the streets onto the sides of the road. The sidewalks are. So if we're taking longer to finish the roads with our final plow routes, that's automatically going to delay the dominoes that fall beyond that, which is when we can get, because it's the same people. So the person that's plowing Peter Street gets out of it, gets into a sidewalk machine or a front end loader, comes downtown, does sidewalks, it's not like there's sidewalk people, parking lot people, road people. It's just a rotation that we go through. So right now, the way our staffing levels are held, there's 5 people per shift. So there's always 5 active people. When they overlap, there's 10. But that overlap is all dependent on how the 16-hour shifts with 8-hour breaks in between is working out.
Okay. And so we don't have the ability to prioritize certain sidewalks higher than others or to prioritize them even regardless of whether we reduce positions. Do we have the ability to say certain sidewalks are a safety issue and we need to prioritize them?
Well, we already do that. The first, if we have one machine out doing one route at whatever point it is, they start at Pat's Park, go down over the hill, do one side of the bridge, turn around, come back and do the other side of the bridge. So those are the first 1,000 feet that we do.
Mhm.
And then we work there depending on what, as resources become available, as the street cleanup ends, parking lots are done, then it all depends on the timing of the schools. So is it, when's 7 o'clock coming? Because we gotta be out of the schools by 7. So sometimes I've got to send resources that way to make sure that school can open on time or whatever. School closes, we actually do spend, we send our resources towards sidewalks and parking lots to get those done sooner, knowing that we don't have to necessarily go to schools.
Okay, so you
So-
can rearrange them when you need to for safety reasons. They don't have to always go in the same order. Thanks. Super helpful.
So the discussion by reducing, so we have 2 shifts of 5 people and a foreman that oversees both of those shifts. Right now, if somebody is either sick or injured or whatever it might be, we can operate with the 4, which is what is here. If we're down to 4 per shift and somebody's out sick or injured, that means that we're gonna be down to 3, which even further reduces our ability to respond. Right now, with the 5 people plus the shared position with WPCF that is dedicated to sidewalks, if during a storm, somebody's out sick or whatever it might be, that person can kind of fill that slot. So throughout the storm, service level is relatively close to what it would normally be, even though we're pretty short. Without that ability to shift that person around, we lose that flexibility. And so beyond the, obvious reduction in, it's gonna just be longer for us to get things cleaned up. There is that certain flexibility that we need to be able to have to respond. I mean, other things happen in snowstorms, trees fall down, whatever it might be happens. We need to try to send resources toward those things too, and we can't always do that. We certainly, if we were only plowing the streets with 3 people, trees would just have to stay in the road, I guess. I don't know what we would do. So, there's a certain risk in losing that contingency that really makes us uncomfortable. It would make me uncomfortable. But and I think you would see more days where we either have to ask for delays at the schools, or schools would have to just close because we couldn't respond in time.
Again, we could, obviously, you do already prioritize. Correct? Public safety in school must be top priority.
That's why we're here.
So we have a legal obligation to first prioritize the roads. That has to be our first priority under
Every
statute.
road or like Main Street, because that seems odd that way.
So when you look at the statute, we are obligated to make our best effort on all roads. Rob already prioritizes certain corridors over other ones. So if you hit some of the streets, they get hit with less frequency than a main road might, but streets are number 1 under statute. Then we have to look at parking lots that serve municipal buildings, because we have certain liability there. If the building is open, which public safety is always open, public works is open if we're there.
We don't plow up works.
Okay, then. So there are but there are liabilities with that. So legally, we've got to hit the municipal buildings next. Then we prioritize the school and the parking lots that serve businesses
Yeah,
and
it's, so the 2 things that sort of that help make me lose sleep are 7 o'clock, the schools need to open. So how are we going to go through the shift changes and set up our response? What's the timing of the storm, which I can't control? But I can learn as much about it as I can to make educated guesses. And businesses downtown open in that same time, but we only have between 2 AM and 6 AM on the parking lots to get those cleaned up before cars start coming in. Once the cars start coming in, there isn't a lot, you know, we can't finish the job, you know what I mean? So that's really kind of from 2 AM to 7 AM, that's what we're trying to figure out how we're gonna get there. How are we gonna pull the rabbit out of the hat this time, you know, so you get to, and what resources do we have available? That's what we're working on during that period.
Sounds to me like, you all are already doing the prioritization that we'd like to see. And I'm not that interested in seeing a cut in service level on this. I think of all the things that I hear about from people, I mean, this is really important to people. But I'm curious to hear what other counselors have to say.
I have said it before, hands down. Orono, there's a clear line of demarcation once you get to VZ down, and we do it better, I think, by a long shot than any other community that I drive to. So I do want to acknowledge that, and I've acknowledged it before. I mean, I think you do a really good, an amazing job.
My team does a good job.
Team. So, but I mean, I think there's potential with this. I get it. We had this discussion last year. And I appreciate that people can be out sick. That could put us in a bind that we don't want to be in. But I don't think there's no business that could ever staff for, I'm not going to have 2 chefs where I need 1 chef just because someone might be out sick. So I don't think that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, not the base 5-person, 2-person, 2 5-person shifts is that response that you're talking about.
Yeah.
We can keep it going. We have a contingency for that. We plan for that. We have a plan for 3 if we have to go that way.
Mhm.
But you would see differences on your street. That's the difference.
We asked for things to consider for reductions, and this is the biggest bucket, and I think it's got to stay in the conversation if we're serious about, one way or another, if we're serious about.
Rob,
So
if
we
it was-
don't want to try and nickel, and try and ask for things that can't be changed. The 7%, the things that have been committed to our employees and things like that are things that be awful hard. We've got to keep those kinds of commitments.
So the other thing I'm going to just suggest is now is the time, because we are holding these 2 positions
Right.
vacant. And Rob needs to start searching now to have somebody in place to be able to train.
July.
Yeah, well,
I would start to search. in
it
July.
feels like now, right? But so that's why this is offered, because the other thing that we know is if we were starting to talk about reducing positions that have people in them, number one, you don't net the same savings because we are a self-funded unemployment entities, so you're not going to see the same kind of savings. And that creates havoc with morale, and it's just not ideal. So,
Yeah.
And the reductions here really have to be in 2s the way we are set up.
Sorry,
Can
Sophie,
I
what
ask-
did you just say? They have to be what?
In 2. Because of the
And so
shifts, right?
But
Yeah,
if
you're
you
gonna
had,
take-
so that was
take
my
one-
question. Sorry. That was my question. If there was only one of these reduced, is it possible that the remaining person goes to whatever shift needs them according to the weather forecast for when the hours are the most important? I mean, can that person float if we hired one, or is that not possible, Rob?
I mean, I don't want to say it's not possible, but either way, it would still represent a reduction in service.
Absolutely.
The structure could be that you essentially reduce to 4 with the shared position remaining dedicated to the sidewalks. So, I mean,
The streets still have to be plowed before you do the sidewalks anyway.
you still kind of got to clean up the streets before you can start sidewalks. So, but I mean, that's the case now. Just like I said, everything would be slower. Everything.
And I'm sure
Whether
that
you
we,
take one person, 2 people, whatever it might be. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
That
that
makes
we as would hear about that and would get some pushback, and we might also get some people who are happy about it, like, or, you know, for whom it isn't a deal breaker and they're mostly worried about their taxes. I am curious, members of the public listening in and those who listen to the recording, tell us what you think about service level.
well,
But I would be inclined to risk taking the heat and to try this service level reduction personally. I'm leaning in
this would
that.
be a functional reduction. in
Yes,
level of
I
service.
understand.
So this is not something where we could just work harder
I
and
know.
make up the difference.
Yeah.
This is,
That's clear. Yep.
But my thought, having been a walker, cross-country skier in and around our town, and knowing other people who try to walk as much as possible, regardless of the season, is that they need and appreciate the service that we have. Yeah, like I don't want to increase service level, which is why I'm perfectly comfortable saying that it's not my recommendation to add an electrician. But I don't want to take something away, particularly because we've committed to making our town more walkable. We have committed to making our town more accessible as part of our DEIB work. You know, I don't want to put barriers in front of people who want to live in our community comfortably. So that's where I know it's an expense, but that's where I come down.
So to give you the benefit of my 12 years here. Again, Rob and I are not coming to you with a, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. This is truly up to you. Previous councils have tried this. And in previous councils, when this was tried as an experiment and it blew up and there were people sitting in council chamber yelling nicely, of course, and emails were flooding in. Rob and I initially took the brunt of that. I'm probably not going to do that again. So understand that we are saying to you, you are going to see a significant cut in service. And if we have a hard time filling a vacancy, that cut is going to be even greater. And we have no more resource to be able to pull from another department or from leadership to put somebody in a truck to go do that. And unlike other things here that end up in the town manager's desk to try to fill in so that people don't see as much of a reduction, I can't do that. I can do a lot of things. I cannot operate heavy equipment. So I need you to understand this has previously been an incredible source of consternation in the winter. Seems like it's easier to make a decision when there's no snow. And the phones will ring, and I'm not going to take the brunt of it. I'm going to pass that along to you.
Fair.
As you could.
And, you know, I think, and we could get trounced next year with snow. I don't think there would have been any issue this year based on how snow came in my opinion, that if we were at this, I don't think
Yeah,
there'd be,
there would be.
okay.
You would have operationally, it's not about what snow comes. It's about how we're able to roll out the resource.
It is about how snow comes also, isn't it? Because if we get a 1 hour storm, I mean, it is about how, if snow doesn't come, it is about, I mean, that's part of the equation.
Plan for
Am I,
that.
I mean, how much snow comes?
I'm asking how much it's gonna snow next year.
I'm saying that's part of the equation.
Get my almanac.
We need something besides this.
It's hard when you try to supplement.
Saying yellow
Can't.
is if we look back at last year, that seemed like an easy year. Streets looked great and the sidewalks were wonderful. One of the first years, I have not gotten a complaint about sidewalks, which was great. I turn to Rob and I say, with the staffing level that we are saying is potential, and I don't want this to come across as defensive. I want to make sure you all understand the ramifications of a decision. I'm not trying to defend keeping the people. But at the staffing level that is on that reduction sheet, would the service level have looked the same this year?
But I understand that it wouldn't, but I guess.
So we get. I have 15 years of data, so we have. Last year we got 30 events with 78 inches of snow.
Efficient. Rather have come one event and get the 78 inches out of the way. But
I would rather have 170 inches.
Right,
You're
right.
absolutely correct. So that goes to
put
that.
that in your budget and pass that.
If you are, the number of events over the years is almost, it's almost always between 32 and 37 every year. The number of inches of snow we get fluctuates. We got 156 one year, we only got 60 one year. All that does, I would say this last winter was a little bit less than an average winter that we've seen over the last, that I've seen over the last 15 years. So, but a 2-inch storm, so you kind of got like, and it all depends on timing, but you're gonna spend just as much time and effort cleaning up 2 inches as you are to 6 inches. 0 to 2 is probably the same kind of level of response. 2 to 6, 6 to 12 is another level of response. And then, of course, I mean, we've had 27-inch storms, probably the highest I've ever seen, but and so what you see out your window, the level of response is the same. So, and it could snow for, the ones that drive us crazy are, it snows for 16 hours and we get 3 inches. Well, that's 3 inches. Public Works clean that up easy, right? Sure, if we could sit home and wait until we came in, but if it's snowing and it's creating icy conditions on the roads, we still got to be out there, even though we're not necessarily, save a little on material, you save a little, but you're still paying those people to be here because they have to be able to keep the roads in the condition that we do. So, the cost of those storms is the same. So we will be able to respond to those types of storms in a similar way with 4 or 5. When you get beyond that, and depending on the timing, when you get beyond that, when you get into the 2 to 6 or the 6 to whatever, that's where you're going to see. And, I can tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 of those 30 storms were 3 or more.
So the other ones must have been an inch or so.
Yeah. Which still means we got to come out or ice or, so, those, the way climate change is dealing with our region is that we are now, it used to be the mixing line, right? Would be hanging down by the coast in Portland area, that kind of. And just in the 15 years that I've been here watching these storms happen, that mixing line is crept up. And right now we're kind of like right on that, where we might see a storm that comes in and we get precip for 16 hours. Well, first it's rain, then it switches over to ice and snow. Then it's gonna snow for a little while, and by the end of it, it wraps back around and we're in the warm side of the storm again, and it's gonna rain a little bit. So we get 3 inches of snow in that 16 hours, but we've worked our tail off to keep the roads clean for that period. So those are and then if you fall behind something like that, you're in trouble. So
Just to clarify, you said,
Uh,
we're talking about two positions that we don't have filled right now, you said, right? They're empty right now, and you're talking about having it filled.
Yeah, they were not empty during the winter.
we had them this past.
Were they? Or they weren't intended to be just winter help?
No.
You didn't hire them, just, we happen to have two vacancies.
Right now.
Rob, can I ask two questions? One is what effect will that have on the other seasons of the year if we don't have those two people? I assume they're doing something else when it's not snow season. And my other question is, again, when we jump ahead to the capital investments budget, there's money there for a truck. And it explains that we currently have 4 heavy-duty plow trucks. So I assume we still need this truck to replace one of those 4 because we would still be running 4 trucks at a time.
No, the description, excuse me. We would eliminate one of the heavy duty routes.
Okay,
So the reduction in cost includes not having to replace that heavy duty truck.
okay.
So
So we
that's where-
currently, go ahead.
That's where that's where 225 of that reduced expense comes from, is the elimination of that capital investment.
Okay, and currently when we have 5 people out, we have 4 people in heavy duty trucks, and what is the 5th doing?
And we have a medium duty truck, so it's I don't know if you've seen the white truck with the wing and the plow doing neighborhoods.
Yes, thanks.
Is there
And my
any-
other one was, what do people do the other off-season, these people that we are considering not replacing?
Yeah, so we're out doing all the general maintenance stuff that you see, so to answer your question bluntly, we just do less. Or things would take longer, so it's gonna take us longer to pick up leaves in the spring. We do in terms of our small construction stuff, we probably end up leaning a little bit more on some contractors to fill some gaps, but less in-house work is a little more expensive, that's for sure.
Is there,
Thank you.
is it permissible legally to use contractors at all for the winter road maintenance? If you had some of this savings was set into some kind of contingency fund, you could,
For winter maintenance?
yeah, well, for like, snow fund.
Not gonna do it any cheaper than
Yeah.
a person's salary. Not even close.
Yeah, all right, just asking.
I think Jeff's points about walkability were really important. If the rest of council feels like this is something that we want to reduce, I mean, I understand that. But I also know as somebody who's involved in a lot of different communities in town who all really value being able to walk in. And when I think about Sarah's comment early on, when we first started discussing this around the safety on the sidewalks for kids, school, going to school, all of that adds up to me as like, I don't see this as a line where I think it would be responsible for us to reduce. I mean, especially given like how valuable people find this service. And I want to be finding reductions wherever we can too here. I think this one is one that people generally find to be especially important. It's a very visible one that people will miss.
I thought Jeff's point was very good too. I mean, I looked at this on the, looking at it, I mean, it's where your eye goes because it's the biggest number, doesn't affect anybody who works for us now. I think Jeff's point was very good. I also take a kind of a point of pride in how quickly, like Leo's point about how quickly it's done. And it's kind of like, well, it's a gold medal versus silver medal. And, at the same time, if we decide to do this, I'm not worried at all about taken the responsibility of this in terms of a council decision. But I do, if we're talking about straw polling consensus, I'm not ready to commit. I don't think we're being asked to commit to anything tonight, but I think it's, I truly am conflicted. I have a lot to think about on this one, so.
I'm with Dan. I feel pretty conflicted on this one. I think that it's definitely not the thing that I would want to consider cutting first, but I don't feel like I can totally eliminate that possibility depending on what else we find as a council to cut and where that puts us on people's tax level. So I guess I would be holding this in the back of my mind, depending on where we come down on other lines.
Can I ask that this be the kickoff point of our recap discussion in our next workshop? And we'll continue to go through the budget in the interest of time tonight.
Sounds good.
That sounds fair.
Thank you.
All right. On page 16 and 26, there's Public Works Cemetery maintenance. Any concerns? Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but Rob, could you explain what a sexton is and what that person does?
We don't have one.
Right. But it was a term in there that I didn't.
Yeah, a sexton is a position that basically describes somebody who's in charge of a cemetery.
Okay. And they're in charge of like everything from the administrative management to the maintenance management and that? Or-
Typically more of the person in the field, so the maintenance of the grounds, conducting the internments, stone maintenance, like this. Record keeping sometimes, but that's usually an administrative thing. It's done.
What page are you on?
We're on the
16?
maintenance
Okay.
and 26. Yeah.
Oh, 16 and 26. Okay, thanks.
Good. One question on 17, actually. We pay the state 20 grand to have an MS4 permit, is that right?
No, that's
No.
what it costs us to meet the compliance for MS4 permit compliance.
So those are the expenses associated, including the DEP fee in the MS4 program. It's,
Part of it is.
some of it is,
Well, yeah.
we pay the permit fee out of that.
Other, that just internal costs allocated to that process, is that?
Yep, so we still have a consultant that we pay to help us with annual reporting, but it's all the different things, so we pay for the GIS license through that. We buy just miscellaneous things, so materials required that the environmental services coordinator needs, so office supplies, all the sort of,
All right. well,
Stuff for
I
the
guess I mainly
poster
wanted,
contest, stuff, the stencils and the paint and.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I'm
tools.
satisfied to know that we're not paying the state 20 grand too.
No, our DEP fee. Oh, it also pays our stormwater group. We pay the DEP $326 twice a year. And then our membership to the Bangor area stormwater group is $4,000. That also comes out of that.
On that same page, we had this could be probably it's too late for this conversation probably, but we talked about recycling. That was one of the things on there. I guess I've tried to ask, I don't think there's an answer to know. They pick up recyclables. We don't know what gets recycled, and is that proprietary and we're not gonna know? Was that
So
accurate?
we are paying for them to pick up our recycling, to take it to a recycling processing facility.
Mhm.
That we know is happening. Beyond that, we have no control over what people put in recycling. And 5 years ago, what people put in recycling, almost all of it got sent overseas as recyclable material and recycled. Except when it got overseas, most of it, a high percentage of it got rejected and landfilled in other countries. So what we saw as a successful recycling program was really outsourcing our trash to third world countries, right?
When you say
So-
we, you mean,
The
The
United States. So when some of those countries began to turn their attention to environmental issues, they figured out that the money that private industry was making, bringing in recycling, that their countries were paying to landfill and deal with the environmental impact of that landfilling was no longer acceptable, which then turned around and created limits on contamination for recycling. So if people continue,
same time, we're transitioning to single sort recycling because that's more convenient and perceived as
better,
an easier way to participate in a recycling program. That was feeding the contamination issue, sort of exacerbating that whole scenario.
and
So-
we were buying into a plant that for a year washed recycling, which then allowed them to sort it, sell it, do better. That MSW/recycling plant closed. And we are all grappling in this region for how are we going to deal with municipal solid waste and recycling. And communities are all faced with this question. Orono and I think Blue Hill are two of the, maybe Mount Desert, are the holdouts that continue to operate, Old Town, that continue to operate their recycling programs. Because it took a long time for us to train people what could be recycled and how to recycle. And in our community, especially with the landfill, with the current plant not operating, which we hope is going to change in the next 30 days. We're looking for a sale there to open it back up. We were at least burning our trash before. And so if you threw your recycling in there, at least it was being burned. But the PERC plant is bypassing more than it is not. And so all of that waste is being landfilled. So at least if we're doing our little part to take 250 tons out a year, a percentage of that, all of it is going out of this region. And a percentage of that is getting recycled.
The question remains, obviously, what is that percentage?
I can't tell you
Yeah.
because
And-
Casella is not going to tell me.
Casella is not gonna, Sophie.
If you start
knows
looking
as
at
much as
this
be known about this, I think.
from your perspective of return on investment, is that where you're headed?
Yeah, there is none.
There you.
Well, no, yeah, and I get it. We talked about it. Well, this, obviously, everyone at this table in this town wants to be recycling, of course. But what is it, 65 a ton and versus 250 a ton roughly, or 75 a ton?
When I started here, 2008, recycling program was a sorted collection. And we made about $15,000 a year on that program. Because everything that we were collecting was clean, sorted, and marketable. There was even a market for glass at that point. That entire thing, because of all the politics that Sophie just described, the market for those commodities is gone completely. And is in the process of being restructured. So from a valued commodity to a liability in just that 15-year period.
And even if it were sorted, that wouldn't solve anything? Like, it's
Well,
only maybe,
The challenge would be if we sorted it, we'd need to find a place to consolidate it and send it to market, which that structure is no longer here, no longer in the region. When we were collecting, sorted collection, so was the city of Bangor. There were a number of communities in this region that consolidated with the city of Bangor at their recycling center. And MRRA, which was the Main Resource Recovery Association, handled the logistics of getting all of that shipped in onto the market. That whole structure is gone
If
now.
we went to a sorted collection, even if we decided we would permit and aggregate a place for us to manage sorted collection, I tell you, Leo, you're gonna have to add people.
Yeah.
And there will not be a return on investment
We
there.
would need to bail it, and ship
Did you
it.
say Bangor does, yeah, I don't think we want to be in that, I wasn't thinking we wanted to be in that business, but, in Bangor does or does not recycle?
When
They don't,
the MRC plant started, they went away from, they went all in one, so they no longer collect, they have a single collection.
I mean, that's-
MSW
I-
and
it-
recycling
it-
mixed.
it seems like a feel-good exercise that we're doing, saying, oh, we're recycling, but we're really not, and we're just paying triple for it. And that seems a little silly to me, and I guess if there's no way that we can technically find out what that percentage is, that's the key, obviously. But I mean, it just,
If it was
it feels,
100,
what's that?
but if it was 100, it wouldn't change the.
No, but we can feel good that we're actually recycling. I mean, I think that's the, I mean, and that's not ROI, that's the cost. I get that. But it's a cost for something that we care about, we want to do. Now we're just getting this cost and we have no idea that I mean, if it were 10%, I think that's absurd. And maybe it's less. I mean, I don't even, it just seems like this is a real feel-good thing that isn't real. And I don't know what the answers are. Hopefully, I mean, we've got people that, well, I guess you guys all know, you know trash and you know recycling, but it just seems absurd to me that we're paying triple and we have no idea what we're paying for. I get it. It's, we don't have a choice, but I'm not, I think it's worth considering whether we want to do that. And I know it's a marginal savings if you collect it like Bangor.
That was the time that we want to make that decision because we're going out to bid on trash and recycling contracts.
Mhm.
And we know that we would add the 250 ton into our trash collection, which is a smaller tip fee. But so it's not the full 135,000 that you would save because you're gonna have to put some of that. But we know that if the same hauler gets MSW and recycling collection, and we eliminate the recycling contract midway through a contract, we've already seen it happen in neighboring communities that did that. You do not see 100% of the savings.
Yeah, we would.
They jack up the MSW contract and
So I accounted for that in that change, so 77,500 includes, and it eliminates the second collection route for recycling, adds to the cost of the single route, because frankly, they'd just be picking up more. Eliminates and changes the tipping fee to that 250 ton to 85.
I'm interested in other councils, what council thinks about that, and it's incomplete information, so it's hard to obviously make any real conclusion, but.
What happens if we enter into a contract that doesn't include recycling and then the plant opens back up again? Is there ever an opportunity to renegotiate?
so
to add recycling back
the
in?
plant is separate from our collections processes here. And I don't know, given what has happened in the recycle market, I don't know if the plant will enter into contracts with municipalities for guaranteeing recycling. I don't know, because the plant took a bath on that when we were tipping at $35 a ton and they were paying more to get rid of it. So I think you can make that decision. And if you stopped recycling, what would happen is it would be when the plant reopens, all indications are that we would be recycling at the 50% level, at least when we started.
Yeah. If the plant was operating the way it was proposed, that it would. Which is kind of, I think some of the thinking behind the switch that Bangor made was that it's supposed to be able to separate the recyclable materials from the single bin collection. So it's more efficient to collect, but you still recover those materials that are commingled with MSW. So that would be the hope that we get to that point in the near future.
And you think it might happen in 30 days? Is that what you said?
So
Sophie
I
said.
always say this when we start talking about the plant. I disclose that I am an executive officer on the Municipal Review Committee board. Municipal Review Committee finally purchased the plant from the former owner.
Mhm.
And we are in the process of selling the plant. That sale period is supposed to happen in the next 30 days.
Which means, but 2 years before the plant.
No, it means probably 6 months before they are accepting some waste, not full capacity. Orono, Hamden, Bangor, and Brewer tend to be top on the list to get in as the pilots because we run packer trucks, which can't run further. We have always been on the high priority to get into the plant first when they're piloting it.
Just so I understand this, that means we'd have the seller picking up, they just be tipping, they'd just be bringing the stuff there, is that right? Same
Yeah.
contract on the pickup, just that
Yep,
we maybe
this-
make out better on the tipping side or something.
So we've always paid the same tip fee that we would under the contract, even if the plant was operating. The MSW tip fee has not changed because we signed a contract with the Municipal Review Committee and they have held the tip fee stable. It goes up every year with a certain consumer price index.
Okay, so it's just that maybe a lot more stuff starts getting recycled.
Yep.
If that place gets going.
And I'm not making any promises on any of that. Just want
Sophie,
to be clear.
Sophie, the contract you said that we're about to put out to bid, is there a deadline for when we have to do that? And also, how long is that contract? Is it a year? Is it 3 years? What length of contract are we signing?
Well, you get to decide that. So I'll be putting out an RFP for the collection contract, not the processing or anything, just the collection for both a curbside MSW collection weekly and a recycling collection every other week. As if we, continue what we're doing now. The current contract with Pine Tree Waste expires June 30th. That's not a hard deadline. They won't just leave us high and dry. I'll also be asking for kind of like what we talked about with the automated side load collection that we discussed. I'll be asking for alternative bids. So other options that contractors may want to offer us for other ways that we might be able to collect our waste. Depending on the type of collection, so we're coming to the end of a 5-year contract. Stability in this service is important. So that's one of the reasons why we went with a 5-year contract this last cycle. Side load collection is going to require a little bit more upfront investment from the contractor. So they would need to buy a truck to serve our route. So they may ask for a longer term agreement, a longer commitment from the town. So I would say anywhere from a single year, 3 years, 5 years, or maybe as much as 10 years, depending on obviously what you all decide you want to do. But those options will be presented to you.
We know we'll still be having trash in 10 years. So.
Be here, chances are you're still going to want to collect it.
You're required
It
to,
may go to a different place. I'm hoping that it does, and the contract will require them to haul to our designated disposal site within a reasonable travel radius, of course.
Sophie, just so I think I heard what you said, make sure I understand what you were saying. If we did a contract right now and said, we want to pick up, same way we're doing it with recycling, and then we decide, okay, we're not going to do this. It's not, we're not going to get the full benefit by midstream cutting, saying, okay, no recycling. Is that what you were?
You're not, it's not gonna be a dollar for dollar. However, you would have gotten the benefit of being able to see what's happening in the region and how
Yeah.
things are coming along.
We would just need to renegotiate and it would be,
I was just thinking, if we did it the other way, if we just had a single pickup and then had to add that on because now, well, or I guess with that plant starting up, would you say that takes everything?
It can,
we'll
mean, the
see how the
problem
new
is
owners
that-
set up their
that
process.
the communities that decided to go all in one bin, Rob and I analyzed it and said, we don't want to recommend this to council until there is proof that it's going to actually work. And we wanted to see data and we wanted to see recycling data. And we were partway through our collection of data and it shut down. And all of those places, every time PERC is on bypass, they are landfilling their trash and recycling. And so this is 100% council's choice. I just know that we go the extra mile in lots of different ways in Orono because of our desire to be environmentally friendly. The $8 million that we put into the wastewater treatment plant was around being more environmentally friendly. So I don't know how you're, in many ways, I absolutely don't agree with I don't disagree with what Leo is saying. Like, are we really getting a physical benefit? When you talk about the values of the community, the recycling program, if it were working, would be a huge piece.
There's no question we would go out of our way to be environmentally friendly, but if we're not being environmentally friendly, we're fooling ourselves. That's my point.
What is the university doing with their recycling? Is it going the same place as ours currently? Yeah, so seems.
And I've had a lot of conversation with Dan Smith, who runs Resource Recovery. He is in the same exact
Yeah.
boat. And for them, not that I would put words in his mouth, but how I understand his position is just that politically and in trying to meet their promise to students and faculty, they are, last I knew, they were gonna swallow very and pay the $225 a ton.
Yeah, and you said it politically. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to where Leo is from principal standpoint. I would need to know, what is the context? How do we explain it to people if we made some kind of change away from the recycling program? People. It is, if we knew tomorrow, if there was an expo day tomorrow and the Bangor Daily News, it said all of Orono's recycling is going into a landfill. Okay, that's an easy one, but that's not what's gonna happen. But I mean, we need to be able to communicate it with the community and what our solution is, what our alternative is, because we've got to have an alternative to what we do now, I think, for this community.
I like spent a lot of this afternoon actually thinking about this, and I haven't come up with any silver bullet solutions. I was just thinking about the fact that yes, our recycling is optimal and we don't know how much of it is in fact being recycled, and that's like a not 100% efficient process anyway. And I believe in using our resources to try to push our town in the direction we want to go. And I think we all value environmental stewardship, and I certainly do very deeply. So I was like trying to come up with what is the best use of $77,000 that like is forward looking and tries to get actual solutions to our municipal solid waste program. And I haven't come up with it yet, but that's what I spent all afternoon thinking about.
Just slashing taxes.
He
Yeah.
just laughed in
No,
taxes.
it's reinvestment in
What
the-
could I do for 77 grand for the environment?
Good for you. That's how you're gonna be thinking, so.
Oh, yeah.
Love to hear it.
Nice trees, yeah.
Rob and Sophie, did you both clearly say that renegotiating the contract is equally easy in either direction? Like if we go with the single pickup and it has to be changed? I know we hope it wouldn't, that even if the recycling plant reopened, they would take single pickup, but is it equally easy to renegotiate these contracts in all directions, to go from single pickup to double and double to single, or are certain directions easier to move than others?
I would say they're possible in both directions. It would be easier to go from a 2-route collection to a single than vice versa, I think.
Then to add back in. Okay, thanks.
Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Um. Have you had the conversation before about doing recycling collection monthly rather than bi-weekly, or what does the picture, what would you imagine the picture would look like for that?
That's what my garage would look like.
Yeah,
I guess there's
I
that.
mean, you can see the amount of material that's out there
Mhm.
just with the 2-week wait.
Mhm.
I think the other part would be, I don't think that we could do a monthly collection with the one truck. I think we'd end up having to split that. We'd add, probably we'd add more cost
One
than.
day.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good
Yeah.
to know.
I think our amount of recycling is more about the number of people who are participating, not the level that people are participating at.
'Cause I know at least for the Thursday run, it's a little bit larger than the Friday run. The truck is freighted. Sometimes they're just right to the limits of their capacity, so. If we went to a monthly, they would have to provide 2 trucks per day or something like that. I think we'd end up. I don't think it would work.
It's kind of amazing that one truck does get around this town. I didn't realize.
No, I think you must have to dump
Well,
it.
it's
Yeah.
2 days.
Right, no, but I mean, I would have even thought on the Thursday run would be maybe
It's just one truck that goes all around.
And it can back it on.
How many times does it have to empty during the course of a day?
It doesn't, that's what, that's
Amazing.
That's why
Right.
the collection is split into 2
Yeah.
days. Because the capacity of that truck can fit. That's for both MSW and.
Wow.
recycling.
But what it means is when they miss routes, the general manager from Pine Tree is out in his pickup truck picking up because they
Right,
can't
or
ship.
mechanical issues or things like
Yeah.
that. And it's one of the benefits of having a larger contractor doing our work is they can pull resources from other places.
Yeah.
Pine Tree's done a really nice job with prioritizing more.
I think they've done an amazing job, I would say. I just want to put a shout out. I think they've done an amazing job, and they're also super friendly and really kind on the days when I run out with my trash when they're coming down the road. One time they even stopped to help my child pull a huge stake that was stuck in the front yard. They've been very nice. I appreciate them.
I am aware of the time.
What? Oh, whoa.
We budgeted until 8 o'clock and we still have to get for this,
Plus facilities.
plus facilities, plus capital. So what is the best way to proceed so that we have enough time to be deliberative about it, but that we're not deliberating till midnight?
So you all want to talk again about the operation, changing the winter maintenance level, right?
Yes.
A Thursday is a much better day for Rob to be here than a Monday because he has Mondays off. So he would come in on a Monday. I don't want that to, he would absolutely do that. But if we're gonna bring him back again, I'd like to try to bring him back on the day he would normally be here. We have an hour on Thursday before the attorney gets here. So one option that you would have would be to see if you could get through Public Works and try to take, I mean, outside of capital facilities O&M hasn't changed dramatically. If we could get through that and then maybe spend the hour next week on the question of winter maintenance for Public Works and the capital budget. That would give you maybe a chance to go back through the capital budget and think a little bit more, so it could be a concise discussion, and see if we could get that in the books so that we're ready to have a final wrap up on the 5th.
Yes, I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Does that work?
Does that work for us? All right, so
Does that
let's,
work for you, Rob? I should ask, are you free on
Yes,
the
ma'am.
1st? Well, no, are you free on the? We'll look at your calendar now.
Is there, I mean, is there an expectation, I haven't been through this before, so is there an expectation that when we go over this, that's when the changes happen, as opposed to, I mean, I was under the impression that there'd be kind of a comprehensive discussion.
that is supposed to be our final night. It's supposed to be a comprehensive
Okay.
discussion, but my fear is that I'm so new at this, Dan,
Yeah.
that I didn't want to not have a preliminary discussion so that we couldn't have a fruitful final discussion.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what we're headed for, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was, yeah, it wasn't like, oh, we. Yes, we had to make that change, was 3 weeks ago, so.
I think what I learned and what seemed to me in the budget process last year is that the sooner we can raise an indication of what we're in terms of service level changes, the better able we'll be to, coalesce around a plan going into budget time.
So when we leave the last budget conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I need very clear direction about what the draft proposed budget is going to be and what the priorities that
And that is
council
June
wants.
5th.
That night, it's either June 5th, or if you want to kick the can to June 8th or whatever that Thursday is too, we can do that, but I gotta, the less amount of time I have to put a presentation together, the less professional and thought out it's gonna be.
I'd like to shoot for June 5th. Keeping on the outside edge if we. brings it or something. Okay, so let's try to make our way through Public Works facilities or the rest of the Public Works budget and the facilities, operations and management part of our discussion tonight. So our next section, I think, is Public Works Town Garage.
What page you on?
I am on 18.
I was curious about the HVAC line. Is this, so we're not talking about the same HVAC that's in the public safety building. This is an HVAC system in the public works?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and the expenses look like they were really high this year. Was that a one-time thing? I mean, they're not budgeted very high for next year, slightly up, but not a lot. Was that 17,000 a one-time thing, Rob?
I'm hoping we had, we did some duct cleaning early on in this fiscal year that we will be doing next year. We had the main heat pump that's tied to the geothermal system had a failure this year, which was kind of an expensive fix, so. Seeing that line being spent over this year. And hoping that fix lasts for a little while. It's the heat pump was obviously installed when we built the facility in 2015, so it's about 8 years old. We had hoped that that heat pump would last about 20 years, so it's fair to think we'd have some relatively large maintenance issues with the HVAC system about halfway through its life, so. Those are hard to, anything on that scale. Hard to budget for that because they're large expenses when they happen, but doesn't necessarily justify that you need to budget for that every single year. So that's where you see that expense in this year. And I guess I'm hoping we won't see that this.
Thanks.
I'll stop there. Good deal.
Any other questions in this section? Quickly move us ahead, but I don't want to miss it.
51.
Thank you. Yeah. This is on facilities, operation and management.
Starting on page 51. My only question in this, one of my biggest question in this section was regarding the unscheduled overtime line, and just wondering why that increased specifically, this year, and do we expect those kind of fluctuations in overtime to continue?
No, I think it's just getting caught up to a line that really hasn't changed very much over several years.
And the way that line was changed has been reallocated because it used to get charged to winter maintenance overtime.
Yeah, so the person that fills the laborer's position in the facilities department is the person that does all the snow removal for the buildings, as well as helps out with the downtown sidewalks. So that's really that's the majority of where that line gets used up. And it just wasn't enough this past year, so I felt like we needed to.
Okay. Other questions or concerns? During the general facilities?
There's not on the HVAC system here, it looks like on 52. So there were fixes that had to be made this year, obviously, right? That's
Which, I don't know.
They're talking about,
Town office 61.
no, yeah, they're, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so now we're moving forward to municipal and public safety buildings. So
So
that's different HVAC.
60, 61, 60, 39.
Yeah, so we're looking at there's there's some planned, what I know we're gonna have to do with the condensers that are the AC. We had a ton of AC issues this past year. So there's 2 condensers that need to be replaced back there. That addition is gonna fund that. So we're gonna replace the condensers and change out the fluid that it uses to a more efficient use. And
does that cover public safety and here?
no, just
just
this
the
time. Yeah.
Wait, just which side?
Just municipal building.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
public
really,
safety, just municipal. Okay.
One of the reasons why you see expenses for municipal building and the public safety building grouped together is that they have a shared HVAC system. The boiler is routed throughout this building, but also goes across the plaza and goes into the other. The air conditioning units are specific to each building, but the electrical and all that is sort of lumped all together because there's some areas we can't.
In professional services, contractor services, and budgeting 76, where probably looks like they're spending that this year, and it's going up to 12.75. Is there something specific about that's going to change there?
Elevators. So we know that the elevator contract is going up. We know for sure that our pest control is going to go up, and if we end up adding security monitoring, then that we would need that to cover this too.
Where are elevators?
We got one in each building.
There's 2.
And
Right now, we have to do quarterly inspections that cost $500 a piece just off the bat, just to have them show up. And then if there's any maintenance whatsoever, and as these age, maintenance is going up, that's on top of that. So
Thanks.
you need to be prepared to cover those costs.
we might just call them ThyssenKrupp and not ThyssenKrupp. Same.
It's really, it's a tough area.
Kids should go into elevator maintenance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the next
Either
place.
that or
up.
become an electrician.
Yeah, exactly.
HVAC
more.
and elevators. I have a question when we're on elevators, which jumps us way back, but there's an elevator line that I haven't understood that's way back in the first custom budget report in the general section in the front of the binder. So it's in that custom budget report in the intro section, and it's on page 9. And it says something about the senior center elevator fund, and that it's on a revenue page and it looks like we're taking 320,000 out, whereas this year it's only been 6,000. Can someone tell me about that and where that money, I didn't even know we had an elevator fund. Is that being used for some of these elevator projects, Rob, or is this a totally different elevator project? I looked through the capital section and I couldn't find anything that matched this number anywhere. So I'm just confused what it is.
I'm gonna guess, you said it was on page 9.
Page 9 and the custom budget report on the revenues page. Well, it's page 7 of the report, but it's page 9 on your numberings, on the bottom. I don't know which page number you want.
I don't know where you are, Sarah. I'm sorry.
Oh, before general government?
Yeah, before general government and just in that first intro section after Sophie's really lovely report at the beginning. And then,
Page 29?
no, page 9, or if you look at the bottom numbers of the pages, and if you're looking at the top right corner, it says page 7. It's custom budget report revenue in the intro section.
So can you tell me what the number is before it?
Department 85 reserves and then 51 senior center elevator fund.
I'm gonna guess it. So what is happening there is,
Oh, wow.
Found it.
yeah, so it's not really the way this report runs. When I tally the department expense total to give you these cost centers, it picks up the last expense line, even if it is 0. Senior center elevator fund is 0, but the tally of the use of reserves is 313,500. So that's a reporting issue. I caught it someplace else that you guys haven't caught it yet. And I'm not going to tell you where, so you can go searching for it.
Okay, so we're not actually taking any money out of the senior center elevator fund. Do we have a senior center elevator fund?
We did, it has $0 in it.
Thank you. That's helpful about elevators. Appreciate it.
Did not see that.
That's sharp.
She doesn't miss much.
So anything else on the municipal and public safety building operations maintenance? Okay, what about library operations?
I noticed that we haven't spent all of the cleaning and landscaping supplies, but I also don't think we necessarily need to cut them. This budget stays flat, so.
So just so you're aware, we just hit the
Hit the pay button.
season. for
Okay,
that.
Yeah, so
all
that,
right.
what's left
Oh,
to do,
because-
yes.
That'll be your lawn mowing
This time.
until, got it. All right, that makes sense.
We actually have a master gardener who,
That's right. That's funds really for taking care of the village green.
Okay, great.
planting stuff.
You see, they cut $920 out of the electrical line here at the library. Just calling it out for you. Yeah.
Senior center, senior citizen center. Page 54. Again, it's relatively small. Okay. Keith Anderson Community House. Do you think as usage increases post-pandemic that the electricity lines or anything will grow?
I think they're okay. If you look at the expenses of that location. To date, they're running under budget, so if use increases, I think it would just kind of come back up to what we're budgeting at.
and we should see if use really kind of took off. you'd see some revenue,
That's true.
not a lot, but some.
Life safety. I don't know enough about this that I would have any question about whether a sprinkler system was operating at maximum efficiency or not. Just hoping.
Yeah, and a lot of the inspections are prescribed, so there's an annual inspection, then there's a next step up at every third year. You have to do a different kind of test, and then every fifth year, even more. So you don't really, you just sort of work your way through those inspections. It's really not
And
an option.
clarify, Keith Anderson and Birch Street are both sprinkled, correct?
Yep.
And the maintenance beyond. There seems there was some confusion
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. That's right.
You don't have to worry, you're not gonna see him again.
That is sprinkled.
Honestly, it doesn't matter, whatever works.
On page 57.
If I come on the first, we only have an hour. What if we don't go through it? I'll
Yeah,
on the
that's-
fifth anyway, so.
So I'm just
I guess
wondering,
that's
A
up to you.
sprinkler system on. What is, where is that? That's 73, 75. That attached to facilities.
Where are we now?
Page 57, 60, 65 facilities, life safety systems. Dude, I don't know what building we're talking about here, but there's a,
you're in the public library.
No, I think he's in the repairs line.
Oh, life sys.
it's
Right.
after the one.
So
life safety
796,540.
system.
11.
yeah, so
So if you're talking about 65,
No.
796, 540 and 542.
Yeah.
So those are the general, so to do repairs or upgrades so what you see in the upper pieces that are specific to the buildings, those are the guaranteed things, the inspections, the maintenance, what we have to do. Those two lines allow for repairs so if we had a sprinkler system break at the library, we would use those funds to do the repair, and we'd still have the money left in the sprinkler account, the library to do inspections as required.
That means you're
So-
not having to budget enough for a repair in every single building.
Right.
Just say, in
We-
general, we
change.
expect to,
It's something that we just started last year.
Yeah, we made that, it used to be that we would embed cost for repairs into each individual building, but none of the budget amounts would actually cover a repair if you had to do it, because you didn't, same deal. If something doesn't break, then you don't need the funds. So this allows us to do, we do have some scheduled repairs that we know we need to do. But if something unexpected happens, we have some funds to draw from without having to draw from all the other, all the other buildings, just a one account.
This seems like a really smart way to do that.
you know, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the way we have restructured facilities, and I don't think anybody wants to spend a lot of time doing anything right now. But I will just say there seems to be a little bit of confusion that facilities, Rob runs facilities as part of Public Works. He is the director of all of the Public Works functions, including facilities. We have a facility supervisor who has some licensure and experience, but ultimately Rob is the department head for facilities. And he took that on when I begged, and he's done an awesome job, but it's trying to take years of things kind of being cobbled and not put through the same department head lens for planning and operation. So we're trying to bring it into a place that is consistent with the rest of our department operation. And it has been a huge first step, and I think he's done a remarkable job.
We have more hats that we're gonna get Rob.
Well, you talk about, well, that's a discussion for a different. I have,
Next meeting. Yep.
Is that
Yep.
$5,000 for electrical school?
Yeah.
I would say agreed. I was very impressed reading through all these various sections that Rob is responsible for and incredibly impressive. Thank you.
A lot of work.
And not in keeping with how all, every public works director and system is differently in every community. We are just incredibly fortunate that we have somebody who is as talented that can take on as many of the hats that he wears and in finance and doing other things. So, yeah, no, I have. a
Only
vision.
because of the team that we have.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right.
Love it.
Ah,
Very nice.
I would
I
never
am
forget.
Only as good as the group that.
Hey Jeff, I have one tiny question on page 58. I think it's teeny. I was just curious about trying to figure out as I was looking at our staff and all the things they do. It's a long list and very impressive. I also noticed like custodial services is listed there but there also was a lot of contracted or several spots there were contracted cleaning services also at some sites. So do we split our custodial work into some contracted and some not? Or what are the contracted cleaning services back on the library or one of 2 or 3 of those other pages?
We're the only place we have contracted cleaning for buildings. You may see it, I think public safety has one,
Yep.
there's some other places like that, but for the buildings, the only place we do that is at the library. And that's once in the spring and once in the fall, we bring a contractor in to wash the carpets and clean the upholstery on the furniture.
Okay.
Just to come in for a day and do that, to kind of freshen things up. It's a public space, a lot of activity, but we have a single custodian that cleans all of the public buildings. So town office here, the library, Keith Anderson Birch Street,
Police department.
police department does a little bit of public works. So
One person does all.
Yeah.
Wow,
You-
that's impressive. Thanks.
We've Chip.
I can't get 4 kids to empty the dishwasher.
And I mean,
You
he would definitely
It's a
be
management.
part of
Yeah,
that.
it is. Yeah, blame the
clean
top.
17 toilets.
Clean 17 times.
He can tell you about every single one.
Say no more.
So any other staff questions? I'd like to leave a little bit of time for public comment as well, but do we have any?
Can I just revise my suggestion, having heard Rob's concern that with only an hour next week, that it's kind of, I think, expecting a lot that we're gonna come in and have a discussion about cut that you all need to, or service level reduction that you all really want to talk about again, and capital equipment, infrastructure, and facilities, all in an hour. And if we can't do it all in an hour, should we bump that to Monday?
So
Fifth.
so we only have one meeting next week and that is next Thursday, correct?
And you said an attorney?
Yeah, we have an executive session the same day, yeah.
And he will be here.
So how could we best use that hour?
Are there other questions and things that we could hammer out that are not public works? I think what I'm trying to do is, I don't really want to bring Rob back 2 more times.
Could we commit, I'm asking this of everybody, could we commit to addressing our questions regarding all the other service level things that we've discussed that don't involve Rob's sphere? So if we have any questions that we want to revisit about the pool, if we have any questions we want to revisit about public safety, other items that we've discussed, maybe we could reserve that hour to do that review next week and then have give the full time on our next meeting to Rob.
The other thing that we could, if we didn't think we had a whole hour to talk about those things, we could also talk about budget priorities for the presentation, which would be helpful. Otherwise, I make them up and I might get what you want and I might not.
So let's have that discussion for that hour.
So June 1st is everything else.
And we're dragging Robin on
June
Monday.
5th.
Are we good?
Yeah, but then he gets to go to his kid's concert on Thursday, which may or may not be a good
Starts
thing.
at 6. Eighth grade
We're always
symphonic.
on time.
Oh,
Eighth
that
grade
sounds,
symphonic.
oh,
Okay.
that sounds fun.
Any questions from the public? Paul and Frederica? Do we have anybody else online?
There are no hands raised.
With that, thank you all. Thanks for being flexible with moving our schedule around.
Thanks, Sarah.
Appreciate it. And we'll be super productive at the next meeting.
Chris, for just sitting around here.
So
well.
one of the, yep, and I'm also sending you something to think about with capital.
Thank you. Nice to see you all, even if you couldn't see me. Thank you.
Sarah.
Safe
travels.